Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our board meeting this evening on February 23rd. Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given to the board secretary in the following manner. Posting written notice on the official school bulletin board at the administration building on February 17th, 2021. Transmitted notice to the Courier Post and Philadelphia Inquirer on February 17th, 2021. Transmitted notice to the clerk of Cherry Hill Township on February 17th, 2021. And I will now turn it over to Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Arroyo.
Here.
Mrs. Stratton.
Here.
Ms. Friedel.
Here.
Mrs. Matlack.
Here.
Mr. Avadia.
Here.
Mrs. Schultz.
Here.
Ms. Stern.
Here.
Mrs. Tong.
Here.
Mrs. Neary.
Here. Okay, and please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag for the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay. We will move to approval of minutes. We have approval of minutes for the organization meeting dated January 5th, 2021. Approval of minutes for the board work session, special action meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated January 12th, 2021. Approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated January 26th, 2021. And do I have a second? Ms. Matlack? Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
All right, I opened up the online voting so you can vote on the minutes. And we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, great, thank you. Dr. Malash, I believe we have a board recognition this evening.
We do. Thank you, Mrs. Neary. I'm very excited to welcome Ms. Kathleen Jenkins to the meeting this evening. The board, many of you already know that Ms. Jenkins represents the Cherry Hill African American Civic Association, and our school district is blessed to have an opportunity to continue to work with CHACA in their annual Black History Month program. This year, because we are doing it virtual, it's going to be a little bit different. Normally, we would have an opportunity prior to the board meeting or during the board meeting to see some of the children's projects or stories or videos. Ms. Jenkins has worked with Mrs. Esposito in putting that all together in a slideshow, which we'll post on the website later on this evening. Ms. Jenkins is a retired educator, but as so many educators, she really has never really retired. She has continued to be a sage and a voice and a presence for so many of our children and families as she leads this program each year. So I'm very excited Ms. Jenkins is with us tonight. She'll be introducing the students who are receiving the awards for the different programs by grade level. So Ms. Jenkins, I'm going to turn it over to you and then I'll say a couple more words at the end. Thank you for being with us this evening. Ms. Jenkins, it looks like you're still muted. Let's just get you off of mute there.
All right, I'm unmuted now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. We do this in partnership with the Cherry Hill Public Library as well as the school district. So our first place winner for K1 is Terrence Stratton. Our second place winner for K1 is Amira Austin. For our first place winner for grades 2-3 is Andrew Langman. Our second place winner for second grade, third grade is Gabriella Missiosia. I probably mispronounced her name, so I apologize. And the third place winner is her sister, Sophia. The first place winner for fifth grade is Xavier Austin. Second place, tied for first place is Gavin Manzano. And the second place winner is Lydia Brennan. Those are all fourth and fifth graders. Our third place winner for fourth and fifth graders is Haley Redfern. Our first place winner for sixth, seventh grade is Ella Ovadia. And our second place winner for sixth, seventh grades is Madison Pedor. Our second place winner tied for second place for sixth, seventh is Lavanya Viswanathan. And our third place winner for sixth, seventh grade is Chase Maynor. Our first place winner for eighth, ninth grade is Kira Washington. Second place, tied for first place is Sean Ladinsky. Second place winner for eighth, ninth grade is Sekou Tarrant. Third place winner for eighth, ninth grade is Colin Duckett. Our first place winner for 10th, 11th grade is Joshua Gray. And our second place winner for 10th, 11th grade is Shira Wise. Our third place winner for that same grade group is Ziv Amsali. And now we have our seniors. Our first place winner for our seniors is Reese Green. And our second place winner is Julia Petrowski. And we have our committee members who worked on this, myself, Aaliyah Robertson, Iris Gillette-Spio, Tanya Tarrant, and Emma Waring. And our judges were Joanne Caesar, a retired school administrator, Almar Dyer, a Camden County commissioner, Jerian Graham, a retired educator, Laverne Mann, director of the Cherry Hill Public Library, Joyce Matthews, a retired educator, Eric Montgomery, a photographer, Carolyn Morgan, a retired school administrator, Charlotte Samuels, a retired educator, Vivian Webb Standback, retired educator, and Clarissa Walker, a retired school nurse. And we just want to thank all of our participants. So both all of the entries and all of the winners will be posted on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Ms. Jenkins, before we do a round of applause, can you just talk a little bit about this year's theme?
Okay, this year's theme talked about how the African-American experience in voting in the United States. And so many of our students highlighted different amendments, different case laws, and different people who were instrumental in fighting the voter suppression. Our first place winner talked about John Lewis, our K1 John Lewis, and I can't think of the other little girl, but many of them they did case law, which was interesting that they would do that. And also they did amendments like the history of the 15th Amendment, the history of the Voting Rights Act and how it impacted them and their families. So we learned a lot about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ms. Jenkins, thank you so much for once again leading the charge and making this happen for the students, even in such a challenging time. We're incredibly grateful for the work of the organization, for the Civic Association, how much time, energy, and focus you continue to spend on our youth. And how about a nice round of applause from everybody that's watching for all of the students?
Yes, all of our students.
And for Ms. Jenkins and the committee for all the work that you continue to do. We're honored to continue to be a part of this. So thank you for being on, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Oh, thank you. Be blessed.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay. I believe, Dr. Malash, we also have a presentation this evening.
We do, Ms. Neary. Thank you. Mrs. Sugars is going to lead us through in a discussion about possibilities with the budget. So she'll give some perspective on where we are, when we will receive our numbers. Hopefully some folks had a chance to watch the governor speak today. He did his address. I did not have a chance to see him live. We'll go through the information later tonight, but I'm looking forward to Mrs. Sugars' presentation. Board members, Mrs. Sugars and Mrs. Cohen sent you out a document today with questions or with the questions that you can refer to as Mrs. Sugars is talking. So Mrs. Sugars.
Yeah, so here we are. Coming down to the wire here, the governor gave his address today, and typically within 48 hours, we know what our state aid numbers are going to be. Obviously, given the current situation, that's a big question this year. So I just sort of wanted to touch base. At our March 9th board meeting, we will be approving our initial submission budget. The process is the board approves the initial submission budget. It gets submitted to the county office for review. And then after they review it and give their okay, we have the public hearing, which will be held at the end of April. So we still have a couple of unknowns at this point. One, obviously a large unknown is what is our state aid going to be? We still need some additional information from the state that will come with our state aid, like our state facilities tuition and things of that nature. We also will not know until early March, have a better handle on what our health benefits increases are going to look like. So we still have some pieces of the puzzle to put together, but I wanted to touch base tonight because literally the next time the board sees the budget, it'll be to approve it. So currently right now, pending what our state aid looks like, when we originally put our budget together last year, our aid amount from the state was almost $22 million. We then had an adjustment in September that was due to the COVID situation, and our aid was about $19.5 million. It was reduced at that point. So we have been budgeting with the assumption that we're getting flat state aid. And to me, that means that we would be closer to the 19.5 million rather than the 21.8, 21.9 million. And so we had talked at some point about what does a no tax increase look like? What does a 2% tax increase look like? And also the fact that we have some banked cap left. So banked cap is not money. I wish it was, but it's not. It's taxing authority that we accumulated in prior years by using what we call a spending growth limitation adjustment, or an SGLA. And SGLAs allow us to expand our tax levy cap beyond the typical 2%. We have a 3-year rolling cycle to use that additional taxing authority. And this year we have $1.9 million in additional taxing authority that we can use or lose in the 21-22 budget. So basically, if we don't use it this year, it goes away. We don't have an opportunity to use it. So right now, based on the numbers that we have in terms of expenditures, if we're looking at a COVID adjusted state aid amount of $19.5 million with no tax increase, we're probably looking at approximately $4.7 million in cuts that would need to be made. This will likely impact personnel. As you know, 72 to 75% of our budget is personnel. In order to make up those cuts, we would do as much as we possibly could through non-personnel cuts. But at that level, we may have to impact personnel. We would try to do through as much attrition as possible. If we have people that move on or people that retire, we would try to address those cuts through that attrition as much as we possibly could. There would be no tax impact, obviously, if we didn't increase the taxes. If we have the 19.5% state aid with a 2% tax increase, then we would be looking at about 1.2 million in cuts. That we should be able to do without affecting personnel. There would be tax impact, obviously, with that. If we have the 19.5 million in state aid with a 2% increase and we use some of the banked cap, we wouldn't have to make any cuts, and the overall tax impact would be 2.5 to a little over 3%. Now, if we are fortunate to go back to our original state aid number and be closer to the $21.9 million number with no tax increases, without a tax increase, we were looking at about $2.3 million in potential cuts. May or may not impact personnel depending upon what that would look like. And if we get closer to the original state aid amount of 21.9 with a 2% tax increase, I've been calling that the sweet spot. We would not have to make any cuts. We may not even have to go to the full 2%. So we will have more information for you. We will have all of this figured out by next Tuesday when we meet with the BNF committee. We will send information home to the board after that BNF committee meeting. And as I said, at our next board meeting on March 9th, you will have a budget in front of you that will you will need to approve so that we can submit it to the county office, and then await their approval and have our public hearing at the end of April. So we're getting there. Just have a couple more questions to answer, a few more things to figure out. And a lot of that, like I said, should be happening over the next couple days. Is there any questions? Mr. Vadia.
So, at what point does the recommendation come out of BNF what to do in terms of tax authority to prepare the budget, or is that a full board discussion?
Well, unfortunately, because of the timing and how our board meetings are falling this year, more than likely that's going to be a BNF discussion with information that goes home to the board after that BNF discussion. And then, like I said, on the 9th, we're presenting the budget to be approved by the board. So, we'll get feedback from BNF on Tuesday night, kind of see where people are feeling things should go. And then we'll present, based on that feedback, we'll present the budget on the 9th.
And as Mrs. Sugar's talking about, we'll have an idea on Friday morning when we send the memo out. When I send a memo out Friday about where we are once those budget numbers get released. And we're expecting them Thursday.
We are.
So
anecdotally, we've heard good news.
It seemed to be his comments today were positive, especially about funding of education.
Right. So we're hoping, we're crossing our fingers, so we're getting good news.
We like to see it, right?
Sure.
Yeah. As you know.
And then sometimes see it again.
Well, we did, right?
Comes in differently months later.
Yes, we like to see it when the budget is actually adopted.
Yeah.
In June. Not our budget, but the state budget, to go through, for sure.
Yes.
Ms. Friedel, did you have a question?
More of a comment. I was actually going to say that the budget address today was extremely positive on school funding. I would go on the optimistic, the glass is half full. So I am hopeful that on Friday we will get good news where, not only are we where we were supposed to be last year, or this year rather, maybe we'll even be a little farther ahead, because I do believe he said he's trying to get us back on track for the S2 plan of funding.
Sister.
Two questions. So actually, do you know what our numbers, if we had stayed on track with S2, where they should have ended up this year, where they would have been the 21.9, or is that?
It would have been more. We were
more
actually scheduled, I don't know the exact number, but we were scheduled to continue getting increases, I think, for another year or two.
Yeah, 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I really tried to take notes, but I think I missed the last bit. So the last bit I heard you say, if we get the 21.9 million, which was what we should have gotten for this school year, but we didn't. So if we were to even come back to just the 2021 school year, if we do not increase taxes whatsoever, we don't do the 2% tax levy, then we're going to have a potential $2.9 million deficit, right?
2.3.
2.3. I see. I knew I had it wrong. Okay, 2.3. If we get the 21.9 million, which is where we should be this year, but we're not, we went with the tax levy. If we went up to 2% or perhaps even less, then we would be fully funded, no deficit. Now, where does the banked cap come in on that? The bank cap goes over the 2%, correct?
Correct. You have to go to the 2% in order to use the banked cap.
Okay. And so worst case scenario, everything falls apart and we go where we are right now, the 19.5 flat funding. That's really the place where we would have to really look at the banked cap. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Not necessarily all of it, but potentially
But some of it. Okay. Up to perhaps 3%. Yeah, that looks like. Okay. Thank you. I knew I could watch it tomorrow, but I figured I'd ask tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Ms. Matlack?
Thank you. Just a real quick question, Mrs. Sugars. The bank capped, is that use it or lose it this year, or can we carry it over to the next year?
We cannot. It is use or lose it. It's a 3-year cycle.
Right.
And so this is the last year. So if we do not use it this year, it goes away.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no one else, Dr. Malash, did you have any administrative reports?
Not this evening, Mrs. Neary.
Okay, thank you. And correspondence, did anyone have correspondence? I had some, but I just wanted, Ms. Matlack?
Thank you. I just very briefly have 2 meetings that I attended. The first one was the DEAC, the District Evaluation Committee, met yesterday afternoon, and the discussion topics were the evaluation portfolio process for this year and SGOs, the student growth objectives. And also yesterday afternoon, I attended the state county leadership meeting, and there were, let's see, 5 items on the agenda. They talked about athletics. So these are all districts throughout the state that are meeting. And it talked about athletics. Steve Shofie from NJSIA Executive Board is also a board member. So he was at that meeting, and he said that districts who are following the guidelines closely are seeing a good amount of success in their athletic programs. There was also a discussion about what districts are doing hybrid and remote. Many districts are planning to do something similar to our plans starting in March as well. There was discussion about teacher and staff vaccinations. There's several boards who have adopted resolutions to send to the state to support giving teacher a priority for vaccinations. And then there was the item about the 8th grade dialogue program. It's a county program that happens every March, where each of the county, each school in the county sends an 8th grader to the program. And it's fascinating and enlightening. It's amazing how articulate and poised our 8th graders in the county are. And so they're trying to figure out a way to continue that program. They're hoping to do some sort of video with the 8th graders, but they haven't quite figured it out yet. They want to make sure that however they do it, that each of the students, has the best possible part in the video. So they're still working on that, and hopefully I'll have more to report next time. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, great, thank you. Was there anyone else with correspondence? Okay. Oh, Ms. Friedel?
Yes, thank you. Yesterday, feels like it was a long time ago, but it was actually yesterday. I participated on the We Return to Learn elementary level committee. The conversation really was about reopening and the tentative plan for March 9th. We did have 2 parent reps join the meeting, which was nice to hear their perspective as well. Just a lot of work going on with our district administration, with the planning for potentially 4 days of in person.
Okay, great, thank you. And I have some correspondence. The other week, Ms. Friedel, myself, Dr. Malash met with the mayor and vice president and president of town council. We spoke more regarding high-level partnership between the school district and town council moving forward. looking at, partnership on projects going forward. So it was initial conversation and discussion. It was a very good discussion, and we're looking to do it on a more regular basis, perhaps quarterly. So it was very good conversation. And also, as Ms. Friedel mentioned, I sat in on the We Return to Learn middle level committee for middle school, and conversation was much the same. So I won't go into detail again. It was much the same topics discussed in preparation for tentative March 9th and 4 days of in-person. That is all I have. And if there's no other correspondence, I believe, do we have the student rep reports this week, Dr. Malash?
We do, Mrs. Neary. Both Alex Turley from High School West and Naomi Bergtaub from High School East are both on with us. So it looks like Alex just cameraed on. So if you want, maybe Alex, go first, and Naomi's, oh, there's Naomi as well. They're there and ready to go, Mrs. Neary. So however you want to have them present.
Great, thank you. I see Alex Turley, if you want to go ahead and start.
All right, so I'm for Cherry Hill West, and I'll be presenting the board report. For the Cherry Hill West community hybrid opening, students are continuing to thrive during our hybrid schedule. Students who choose to come back to the building continue to report feeling happy to see their teachers and some peers for the first time in a long time. While the inclement weather has moved some days to fully remote instruction, we are glad to see the ability to curb the loss of an instructional day. While the actual number of students in the school continues to be quite low, they continue to bring with them enthusiasm and good cheer. To be exact, West has been seeing around 95 students in the building per day. We look forward to a continued hybrid learning experience. Coming tentatively on the week of March 9th, there will be the possible 4-day implementation of the combined hybrid schedule. With low in-person numbers for both cohorts, it is a likely possibility that both cohorts will be able to be combined for 4 in-person learning days. Current surveys are taking place to gauge the possible population of incoming students. We look forward to seeing more students and enthusiastic learners. As for athletic news, this past week, the West boys and girls swim teams were able to have their first meets of the season. With many new protocols, both meets went very smoothly and successfully. To add to this great news, both the boys and girls have won their first 2 meets of the season. The next meets will be held on Thursday against Cherry Hill East. Basketball, unfortunately, had to cut their season short. However, they finished with a record of 3-6. West Bowling also had started off their season strongly with 3 wins, and so far there have been 5 games held, and Coach Skirbo is doing a great job with the unusual season. As many of us know, an announcement was made earlier this month by Governor Phil Murphy allowing parents or guardians to spectate their child's games in person. This is great news for West Sports, and we are happy to welcome spectators back. But as always, masks will be mandated and there will be proper distancing. As for the performing arts news, choral music, February has been a productive month for the West Choral Music Program. Students have put in work for their parts in virtual choir videos for the 3 a cappella groups, Chamber Singers, Fermata, and Men of Note. As we await the videos to be edited, students are learning repertoire for the upcoming annual placement auditions, which will determine which choir classes students will take the following year. Students are excited to begin this work with Mr. Cooper's new student teacher from the University of Delaware, Ms. Stauber. Theater. February has been a month of the books in the West Theater Department. Students who are taking part in the musical We Will Rock You have been tirelessly rehearsing this month to make sure their show is flawless. We Will Rock You will be the first ever fully virtual performance that a Cherry Hill school has put on. With much excitement and joy, I can confidently affirm that We Will Rock You will be live streamed February 26th, 27th, and 28th. Tickets to the show can be purchased online at the link below. I'll list the link after. Please come and see the spectacular performance and support our students and everyone in the cast and crew. So the link is chhsw.booktix.com, and you can purchase the link for the show there. Miscellaneous news. New this month was Formal Fun for Students. New this month was the Something Fun calendar. In an effort to boost student morale and community engagement, Administrator Ms. Staffen has worked with our staff to offer events for the student body. Staff members are holding after-school events pertaining to a special interest. Students are encouraged to attend and make a connection with peers and teachers alike. Fun things are to be offered, such as a cooking class with Mr. Chivarella, yoga and gardening with Miss Castellani, and current events with Mr. Bova. These are just a few of the many opportunities. Formal fun for students. The student government committees at the sophomore, junior, and senior levels have all been working to plan their respective formal events. Currently, plans are tentative for a combined junior and senior prom this June. Additionally, there will be a sophomore cotillion held on Saturday, May 1st. Having these events are key to the high school experience, and we're doing everything possible to ensure students are both safe and having fun. The African American Culture Club at Cherry Hill West held their first ever virtual Black History panel answering the question, "Who am I?" In this panel, students from West created a video listing facts about an unsung Black hero. Students participating in the event will research the given facts given by the Cherry Hill West student and then fill out a Google form with their guess as to who the individual talked about was. There are multiple videos, each highlighting a new hero. Prizes are awarded for first, second, and third place winners, and this is a great way to celebrate such an important month to our community. Peer leaders at Cherry Hill West. Applications have opened for the next round of peer leaders, and all current juniors are eligible and invited to apply, and we will be accepting applications through Friday, March 5th. And that is all for tonight.
Great, thank you. And next we have for Cherry Hill East, Naomi Bergtab.
Hi, so first I just wanted to touch on the recently introduced 4-day schedule. First of all, everyone seems to be very much in support of the added lunch break, which we discussed at the last board meeting and the recent town hall. The feedback for this change has been fantastic. So I think regardless of how the school year goes, I hope we don't return to a position where we don't have lunch. We obviously don't know how things will go when we return, but that's something I think is extremely important to maintain the rest of the year. And of course, with the number in each cohort being relatively low, I definitely think it was a good decision to combine the cohorts. But as more students are appearing to commit to return to school, making sure it's a safe environment for both the students and the staff is definitely something that needs to be emphasized in these next coming months. I'm excited to see the change implemented, and we'll be definitely gathering feedback to discuss at our next board meeting. As for our activities update, so once again, Cherry Hill East is staying busy and engaged despite not being in person. Just a couple of the major events that have happened in the last month. DECA competition has occurred completely virtually with results coming out next week. East has been continuing its virtual multicultural day events with African American Club preparing videos in this past week that was shared on the Cherry Hill East Activities Instagram. East Side recently did extremely well at the GSSPA Awards, winning Distinguished Journalism Award for the 12th year in a row and won many other individual awards. And Yearbook, which was also another thing that was done completely virtually, has recently started its sale that is available for purchase now. So that's a great accomplishment in this time. East has just been continuing to maintain excellence in a variety of fields, including returning to sports and making theater happen in different ways. Additionally, the PTA has had a successful senior event this past weekend where the seniors were invited to have donuts, hot cocoa, and other treats. And I think it was a great event. It's definitely important to help honor the seniors in a safe way where they could just drive through, pick something up, and feel special. So that was definitely good. As to the recent announcement about senior prom, trip, and graduation, so recently we were put out the schedule. First, prom is supposed to occur a few days before the senior trips. As that is something that was said in the letter to be flexible, I encourage the district to make prom as far away from the senior trip as possible. Since students will not be required to return a negative test before leaving for Disney, having prom within 2 or even 3 weeks of the trip is pretty irresponsible. Students are obviously going to congregate after prom, and then they will be going on this trip without having returned a negative test. It's not right for us as a school to travel out of state knowing that proper COVID precautions will likely not occur, because regardless of whether the prom is outside and socially distanced, we cannot control what students do on their own time in prom houses and things of that nature. So to make prom as far as possible from senior trip, I think is a huge priority. And it was also announced that if you aren't able to get tested when you return from Disney, you'll be required to quarantine for 10 days, which means you won't be able to attend graduation. Of course, we'll have to coordinate with the LaCourse Center to see if it's even possible, but I encourage you to attempt to either move graduation a day later. The trip, I know it's harder to move up because it's been coordinated with Disney, but to have graduation a little bit later to make sure that everybody is able to attend without anyone having to miss out on a once in a lifetime experience should definitely be a priority. And just for student government, SGA right now is working on making Spirit Week happen this year, despite being obviously limited in a lot of ways, and they're trying to figure out like a safe way to do it. So thanks so much for listening to my report today, and I look forward to providing feedback on the various events going on.
Thank you. Okay, great. That brings us to the first public comment. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. The first public comment session is for agenda items only. There will be another public comment section for any topic at the end of the meeting, and it is 3 minutes. And as always, please state your full name and your address. Okay, and the first person that we have is Sarah Jocelyn, and please state your name and address.
Hi, this is Sarah Jocelyn, 1234 Forge Road in Cherry Hill. I wanted to speak today regarding the proposed semester-long African American curriculum. I wanted to remind the board that the social studies curriculum will be updated for the school year beginning in September 2022. So that's the normal cycle for updating it for the student learning standards. I also wanted to make the board aware that in the current curriculum, there are 2 units that are focused highly on the African American experience, which is 1 unit in American History 1 and a second one in American History 2. The first one covers the Civil War and Reconstruction, and the second one covers the Civil Rights Movement. I have not been participating in many of the board meetings, so I haven't heard how this proposed course, which will be required for graduation, differs from the current required classes that are in the high school. And I wanted to also understand whether there would be extra focus on other groups such as Asian American heritage and also Hispanic American heritage, among others. So I think it's very important to recognize that the current history curriculum requires that the Amistad is included within it. And so I'm looking to see how this new curriculum would differ and if it would be providing some more social justice effort on the behalf of many different groups. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and next we have Ben Rood. Please state your full name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Benjamin Rood. I live at 330 Cranford Road in Cherry Hill. As a member of the Cherry Hill community and father of 2 Cherry Hill students, I offer my wholehearted support for the African American Studies course requirement that is up for consideration tonight. A little over a month ago, for the first time in our country's history, a woman of color was inaugurated to serve as our nation's vice president. It's a historic moment. However, I was a little disappointed to learn that neither of my kids who attend Rosa Middle School and Cherry Hill High School East watched or discussed the inauguration in school. And I think it was such a perfect moment to celebrate, a perfect moment to tell an important story. I'm inspired to speak up tonight because I believe that the current curriculum falls well short of representing everyone in our community. The fact that the swearing in of the first woman and first woman of color as vice president in our nation's history was not shown or taught is just one example of how we fail to tell the stories of African Americans and other underrepresented groups in our educational system. Our local government and indeed the Board of Education have great power to improve our lives and to make positive change. In a country where so much remains to be done in pursuit of racial and social justice, approving this course is one small step in the right direction Because I believe all of our lives are enriched when the stories and history we learn are inclusive and diverse, I urge members of the board to vote in favor of enacting the new course requirement tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brood. Next, we have Rick Short, your name and full address.
Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. Tonight, I'd like to speak a little bit about the budget. And on the end of the budget, continue on with good security like you did last year when you brought in cameras to the entire district. I do understand we're still waiting for some of the schools to be installed. I appreciate that, but I do have to question why we can't find $10,000 for each school that already has the vestibule to install to install automatic locks, something that Jeff Gale, who's the director of the DOE security in the state of New Jersey, was upset to hear. When schools don't do that, when you have this opportunity to spend $10,000, a measly $10,000. I know of 2 schools right off the top of my head that this could be implemented 2 years in advance. And I think most people would feel safer with it. Your consultant also said this, Mr. Tolley, that vestibules should be used. Your director of security had a long speech about how a vestibule at one school was so important. Also want to mention about interior doors, and I do have questions about locks for interior doors. Why aren't we putting that in the budget? And I also have questions about putting up parking bollards to protect the front of schools where there's drop-off areas, because God forbid we have a freak car accident, we won't be protected. So I continue to advocate for student safety, and I hope you put it in this year's budget. And I also have to question the district's position on carpeting in Rosa. No, I have never seen it, but what I do know is most of the time lockers are 8 to 10 inches off the ground, and to shim or cut a door a 1/4 inch to put new carpet down over top of the disgusting carpet that the teachers have told me it should be invested in. Our students and our teachers and our staff shouldn't have to walk around on disgusting carpet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Next, we have Sonia Kongaju. If you could please state your full name and address.
Hello, my name is Sonia Kingaju and my residence is 17 Snyder Avenue in Cherry Hill. My comment today is in reference to agenda item 14.3. The district curriculum map for high school social studies states that by grade 12, students should gain the necessary skills to, quote, develop claims and counterclaims thoroughly, while pointing out the strengths and limitations of both claims and counterclaims in a form that anticipates the audience's knowledge level, concerns, values, and potential biases. In order to build these skills effectively, students must be exposed to and become comfortable considering the perspectives of all stakeholders in the happenings of American history. This includes stakeholders of color whose needs, desires, successes, struggles, and contributions to progress ought to be given as much weight as those of their white counterparts, but the reality is that they rarely are. An education cannot serve all students well if it overtly or even subliminally teaches them that non-white Americans are insignificant players in the country's dealings, that their stories belong in the background because they are not worth considering outside the context of special observances. This framework is wholly unconducive to dignifying students of color. So to all the members of the Board of Education, I implore you to vote yes for a required African American Studies course in our high schools as an important first step in rectifying the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kim Gallagher.
Hi. So I'm pretty new to all of this. So if I don't understand the whole process of the budget and how funding is coming through. What I'm curious about is how the district is able to set a budget when you don't know the funding that's coming through from the government or from the state. And then secondly, that, you know, the discussion of raising taxes just seems so easy. And I don't know if the Board of Education is the one that gets to make that decision or what, but as a taxpayer, I would not be happy having my taxes raised just because the school didn't budget according to the amount of money that it was going to receive from the state. And then secondly, I really appreciate hearing the students from East and West talk about their experience with school right now, except as a parent of a young student, I'm a little upset to hear that senior trip is being discussed. I mean, it just feels like under the current circumstances when our children aren't even going to school for more than 8 hours a week, that sending them to Disney World is even an option just seems a bit irresponsible. And it just feels like the priorities aren't in the right place right now. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have S. Goodwin. Please state your full name and address.
Hi, my name is Serena Goodwin, and I live at 112 Mansfield Boulevard in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And I'd like to comment on item 14.3. I just want to ask the board to really think about this unique space that we have. So I have 3 children, and 2 of them have graduated from Cherry Hill East. One is an East senior to this day. And I think about their journeys, my 2 graduates, their journeys after East, and just not having the opportunity to attend school with students who really understood the unique suffering or even the unique challenges that African Americans have in general. You're on an island, you're alone, when people who have been in this country maybe as long or not even as long could even appreciate kind of what the contributions are of African Americans and the sacrifices. I do think it's unique in a sense that just because Cherry Hill chooses to include an African American program or studies program for all students doesn't neglect or even suggest that other groups aren't valued or important or should be celebrated. It has nothing to do with that. It's just an opportunity to course correct just a lack of knowledge that has been kind of permeated our society through the media and other ways. It's just an example for Cherry Hill to lead and produce kids who really have a balanced view of history. And I really urge you to consider that, not just for today's kids, but future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tina Truitt. I believe you're still muted.
Good evening. I'm sorry.
No
Tina Truitt, 4 Haverhill Avenue. I wish to address item 14.3 on the agenda, the African American Studies course. And tonight, I just want you to know that I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization. This is very personal to me as an African American woman, educator, and mother of 3, of whom my youngest is a freshman in high school, and I am a grandmother of an elementary student in the district. So for Miriam Wright Edelman said, and I quote, "Education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it," end quote. The thought that teaching Black history in our schools must be voted upon is simply mind-boggling. How do we expect students to leave their community and world better than they found it if a huge piece of history has been swept under the rug and devalued by some because it makes them uncomfortable? I have said, and I will continue to say, that Black history is American history, and it should be taught as such. So my question is to the board members, were you listening to the voices of those African American students who shared with you that they felt a lack of representation in those history classes and are yearning to learn more about individuals who look like them? And I know firsthand what that feels like. There are many African Americans who have made remarkable contributions to our country, and it's truly unfortunate that there are students and adults of all races who have never heard of most of them. They may hear about some during Black History Month, but we can't rely on this one month to teach such a vast and rich history. Please note that this is also about teaching every student the truth about our American history. It is imperative that it be taught and learned by all students. And although this course is a step in the right direction, it is by no means the final and cannot be the final destination. There is work to be done, and we must be diligent and not stop until we have integrated Black history into our entire school system from pre-K to 12th grade. So by implementing this mandatory Black Studies course as a high school graduation requirement, you will be doing the students of this district a tremendous service, and hopefully many other districts will follow suit. The time is now, because it's long overdue, and the opportunity presents itself for you to change the narrative. So I urge you to do the right thing and approve this course. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Jamie Goodwin. Please state your full name and address.
Hi, Jamie Goodwin, 112 Mansfield Boulevard South. I'm also speaking in reference to agenda item 14.3, the approval of the African American Studies course. And like many others, want to give my wholehearted support for this approval. As many may already know by this point, I am a former Cherry Hill East graduate and also an African American woman, and this is also personal to me. I think one thing I'll just share is I know that sometimes it can feel like, why are we just doing something about African Americans? Aren't there other students of color? Why shouldn't we focus on all these other courses? We're not requiring all of them. But I do think it's important to remember the unique history and connection towards Black enslavement, Black suffering, Black murder in this country, such that understanding all racism towards all groups, it finds its bed in the sort of deep anti-Blackness of this country's foundation. And so I think we should not think of it as at odds, but as a starting point to sort of pull up and include all students of color. And so that's just one thing I want to share, that as much as I want this to see this for me, because I know I walked out feeling like even being successful, being in the honors program, being valedictorian, we're all at odds with being Black, like having dark skin and being a Black person. And so I know that a studies course that goes beyond just history, but sort of thinks about it's normal to have hair like mine, to be successful, to have pain, to be human, you know, how important that is to just counteract all ways in which white supremacy has worked, but it relies on anti-Blackness. And so I really believe that. So I just ask that all the board members will vote yes for this awesome first step, really in including not just Black students, but every student who doesn't make the normative picture of education. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Patricia Mccargo. You're still muted.
I will say to the board, I've lived in this district all my life. I've went through all the schools. My kids have gone through all the schools. This is not the first ride at the rodeo. This has been on the agenda for many, many years and kept getting pushed by the wayside. And I ask you, if not now, then when? We worked with Huck Finn, got that resolved, and then they have Amistad, but Amistad anywhere near comes close to what this curriculum will do. So I say that, you know, for our kids and for our community, it's like our previous speakers have said, it's not about not including anyone. This is our history, our American history, and it should be included in our curriculum. Not just, you know, like the one that says, oh, maybe we'll take this. And that was never what we had in mind. We saddled for that back then because we wanted something rather than nothing. But this is the opportunity, and you have an ability to go forward and be on the cutting edge. And it also pairs with the work that I've been doing with the Cultural Proficiency Committee. this is something that we've also been working toward, getting this curriculum in place. And so I would urge you, all of you, to vote yes on getting this started. And again, I say, if not now, when? We've got to get it done. We can't be longer. The kids are hurting, and you've heard them say that they're hurting. And like I said, I went to school here. My kids went to school here. Matter of fact, when I graduated from Cherry Hill, there were 6 African-American kids in a class of 600. And talk about feeling isolated, we were isolated. And so, you know, I don't want to see that for anybody else. And I don't have any kids in school now, but I still have grandchildren who are here in school, and I have nieces and nephews. So it's as a community member, it's a great concern to me. And I hope that you will go ahead and pass this and get it on the in place, because it's long, long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Alana and Yoni Yaras.
Yoni Yaras, 329 Cherry Hill Boulevard. I also want to hop on the support for 14.3. I think it's also important for this measure to pass unanimously. It's long overdue for our community to take African-American history seriously and realize it's not just about the Civil War and Reconstruction and about the Civil Rights Movement. There's a lot that happened before and after that, and it's still happening right now, and our students have said that to us. I give a lot of credit to Dr. Malash and the administration for not just listening to students, but hearing them out and taking action on this. And I hope this is definitely, as Ms. Goodwin talked about, this is the start of a conversation. This isn't the last action to be taken. This is the start of a long journey towards making a more inclusive environment that is truly equitable for all students. I also hope and excited that the social justice curriculum gets pushed ahead as much as this goes forward. I also wanted to switch to a different agenda item, 16.9. I just acknowledge that Dr. Morton is in an incredible position for him to be moving into an assistant superintendent in this district. I've had the pleasure of working with him last year when I was an intern for the district. Also on the cultural policy committee. He is what educators should be and can be. I think he will inspire the next generation of principals we'll be working with and the students. And especially, I think it's really inspiring for this, both the African-American Studies course and his promotion to be on the same agenda in our district tonight. It's very historical to me as a parent, as someone who went through this district, to see that going on. I'm excited for my kids to go through and to see what happens. This will definitely be a very different district in 2038 when my youngest graduates. And I think you guys are at a precipice of making some really important moves tonight. And I hope it's done unanimously and that we move forward as a community together. And thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Adele Izzy. If you can state your full name and address, please.
Hi, good evening. It's Mike Adelisi at 10 Wicklow Court. I've heard a lot of remarks tonight, and I agree with some, I disagree with some. Obviously, there is a great deal of need for proper African-American studies in our district. However, I do question the validity for why it should be mandatory. I think it was Board Member Tong who asked a very relevant question in the recent Cherry Hill Sun article titled "District to Require African-American Studies." She asked why this course should be mandatory. I don't think I've heard a satisfactory answer to that. I'm wondering if Board Member Tong has heard an answer to that. My personal feeling is that the more that we push an agenda based on color, the more problems we are going to have. We need to embrace a view of American history that is without color, that embraces all of our attributes and all of our contributions as Americans, whatever race and background they come from. And I'm also wondering, like some other people question, where is, say, the Jewish American course? Jews who were the first slaves and slaughtered by the millions, where is the course on them for Jewish American contributions? I don't remember ever having such a thing in Cherry Hill East, and I went through this system, and I'm still here in this system, obviously. So those are my questions. Number one, why does it need to be mandatory? Number two, where are the courses representing other groups? Number three, when can we move forward without focusing on color? I think that's the biggest issue we face right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Julia Halblock.
Yes, hi, my name is Julia Halblock. I live at 74 Lafayette Lane, Cherry Hill. I'm a former student of the Cherry Hill East School District, and I'm addressing agenda item 14.3. I would just like to voice my support to vote yes for the Cherry Hill High School required African American Studies course. Furthermore, I would like to stress the importance of integrating intersectional African American history throughout the curriculum, not isolated in just the African American Studies class, but incorporated throughout all classes and levels, recognizing that African American history is American history and the two can't be separated. Furthermore, I see that African American history course is only a start to a fuller understanding of American history that promotes the identities and experiences of everyone who has and continues to make this country what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Eric Goodwin.
Good evening. My name is Eric Goodwin. I'm at 112 South Mansfield Boulevard. And I'm also speaking on behalf of item 14.3. And I'm really asking and urging the board to vote yes on this item. It's been a long time coming to have this opportunity to actually be a leader, not only in our state, but in our country, as a school district that really promotes and pushes forward equity and inclusion. And this opportunity is really to really build up the African American, help people understand the contributions that African Americans have made to this country, and all of the struggles and as well as contributions that really have pushed this country to where we are today. And I think it's really important to have this opportunity as a district to really say that we value that and we want to teach that. Obviously, it should be integrated throughout all the courses and all the studies, because we've had famous mathematicians, African-American mathematicians, famous African-American scientists, famous people that have really contributed to this country and to the culture that we live in. But this is a great first step. And I really do believe that it's not just about pushing color, but it is about really helping all students understand contributions that from a community that have been much maligned in the media, in all the, you see all these negative things about African Americans, and you hear these negative things about African Americans, but to really be able to have a course where all the students can see all of the positivity and all the great contributions, all the amazing scientific things that African Americans have done, and to push this country forward and to help this country grow and prosper as we are. And I think this is an opportunity for Cherry Hill to really take the lead and to really be a community that really supports one another. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr.
Please vote
Goodwin.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Okay. Okay, that now brings us to the superintendent comments. Dr. Malash?
Hold on, Ms. Neary. Mrs. Sugars has a couple of
oh, yes, the submitted comments. Thank you.
Hold on, let me just make sure.
Our first one is from Justin Myers. The term student voice is echoed in the halls of every administrator's office in our district. How often do we really see it in action? Publicization of systematic racism has been abundant on the news and social media platforms this past year. What the adults already knew is now being live streamed to our youth. Please allow our schools to be places where students are safe, encouraged to be themselves, and develop empathy and respect for all their classmates. These students have done a tremendous job raising local awareness and asking for change. Please do not fail them now. The opportunity to be the first district in the state to require these courses will not be available much longer. Next is from Eve Greika, and I'm going to apologize now for anybody's name who I mispronounce. Eve Greika, I am a resident in Cherry Hill and I graduated from Cherry Hill East in 2018. This email is in regard to agenda item 14.3. I am contacting you to express my support for the implementation of a required African American Studies course for all high school students. In the first step towards equity in education, students need to learn about their history. African American history is American history. This implementation would have great impact on students and be a good first step towards a better understanding of racial injustice in our country. Beth Becker, 17 Dunbarton Road. I am writing in strong support of the resolution to implement a mandatory African American Studies course in the high school. Our elementary and middle school social studies and history curricula give only cursory and shallow attention to the African-American experience. Our students need more than 1 month of biographies of Black Americans squeezed into their regular curriculum. They need integrated lessons on history, culture, and perspectives put in historical, social, and political context. Though I believe that our social studies and history curricula should be completely rehauled from kindergarten through 12th grade in order to tell a true and full history of our country and our world, I believe a mandatory African-American studies course for high school students is the first step and a vital one. We cannot continue to send our children out into the world with an incomplete understanding of our history. African-American history is American history. Next one is from Nadia Quasi on Saddlehorn Drive. My comment is in reference to agenda item 14.3, and I feel that a required class for all high school students in African-American studies is necessary. It is embarrassing that in America, most of the history taught is false or whitewashed to continue a white savior narrative, downplaying the genocide and war crimes that this country commits on almost every other country, and never admitting to playing a part in coups and wars that lead to millions of people dead or displaced. Having an African-American studies course is the first small step in fixing a broken system and will benefit each and every single student who takes that class. Students being accurately informed on African-American history and life is key to creating an environment that is welcoming of everyone, a claim Cherry Hill loves to promote despite very few instances of true diversity. I hope to see 14.3 supported by the Cherry Hill Board of Education on February 23rd. The next comment is from Jaslyn Sullivan. I was in the class of 2014. My family's residence is in Old Orchard. My comment is in reference to agenda item 14.3. I feel that this course is super necessary. Students should be educated on the whiteness and white supremacy that plagues the systems they are involved in. This course could be vital in dismantling the ideals and systems that oppress Black Americans and other minority groups. This one is from Nabiha Khan. I've been a resident of Cherry Hill since I was 4 years old. My comment is in reference to agenda item 14.3. I love Cherry Hill and its diversity. As a Bangladeshi Muslim American, my parents couldn't have chosen a better place to settle down where their kids would be accepted and celebrated. I went to Johnson Elementary, Beck Middle, and Cherry Hill East, and the education I received from this school district has been valuable to me throughout my life. However, it is imperative that an African-American studies course be included in the curriculum. We stand to gain so much more by being honest and inclusive, and a course like this can help us achieve that. The world after high school is so much more complex, and you can't really ever be prepared for it. The best thing we can do for our students is to provide them with as much knowledge and wisdom as possible, but now how to distinguish fact from fiction and uphold justice. I hope to see this course added to the curriculum, and I thank you for your time and consideration. This is Adai Kwazi from 2 Saddlehorn Drive. I'm a former Cherry Hill student and a current Cherry Hill resident. My email today is in reference to agenda item 14.3. I believe African-American studies should be added as a required course. Our nation's present problems with race and intolerance cannot be put into context if we don't really know the history behind it. Adding African-American studies will help bring us one step closer to dismantling white supremacy. Any little African-American history mentioned in class never touched on the systematic aspects of racism and white supremacy. I know if I was able to take an African-American studies during high school, it would have only helped me better understand our nation today. It is the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. This comment is from 4 individuals, Zandra McKinley, Asia Morris, Michaela Randall, and Joy Thomas. Thank you. We're grateful that the consideration of the curriculum has come this far. We just wanted to take this opportunity before the vote to address the community and the board. We are asking for this course to be mandatory to build a more culturally aware community. This course aims to teach Black history in a different perspective and promote anti-racism. Reflecting on something that we came across, being taught to avoid talking about politics and religion has led to a lack of understanding about politics and religion. What we should have been taught was how to have civil conversation about a difficult topic. The same can be true for race. We have to have conversation using the same factual information about our history. If the district passes this course, we want to ensure that it will not replace the mandatory Amistad curriculum. However, it will be an additional resource and an opportunity for more conversation and exploration. We hope that the board passes this course and has the courage to be pioneers for the state of New Jersey. And our final comment from Nubara Khan of 1510 Chalet Drive, Cherry Hill. I'm a graduate of the school district. My following comments are in reference to agenda item 14.3. A mandatory course on African American studies is not only necessary for students, it's imperative to have a complex and nuanced understanding of local and national societies. In my time as a student in the district, I completed the honors and AP courses in World Civ, US History 1 and 2. In these courses, while the transatlantic slave trade and civil rights movements were addressed, it was at a surface level. I did not have a comprehensive understanding of what the existence of an enslaved population meant for America in the past or its consequences in the future. Said consequences are a factor in every major societal issue we face today, from healthcare inequity to gerrymandering and redlining. This is not an indictment on the teachers and faculty of the schools. It is very much a failing of the curriculum and its district officials that create it. We are well beyond the point of arguing for whether or not a course such as this is necessary, as the last year and all its hardships have shown. A mandatory course on African American history is a small step towards addressing centuries of erasure and whitewashing of American society. Cherry Hill School District takes pride in its multifaceted community, but that pride is based on farce and hypocrisy if it does not take substantial anti-racist action for the benefit of all the students, not just the Black and brown ones. African American history is American history.
Thank you, Mrs. Sugars. Mrs. Neary, that's all of the comments that were submitted in advance.
Okay, thank you. Apologies for almost forgetting that piece. Okay.
That's okay.
Next, then that now brings us to Superintendent Comments, Dr. Malash.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. So I wanted to focus my comments tonight just a little bit on the We Return to Learn plan and give some updates on where we are. There's been a lot of discussion about We Return to Learn, especially during the last few days after the district postcard came out on Friday night, letting families know that we would be putting out a survey to gauge interest in having children return to school 4 days per week. I want to thank the students, Naomi and Alex, for their reports. Always the value from hearing directly from them about their experiences, reporting on behalf of their peers, and letting us know what's going on. In terms of We Return to Learn, as we sent the postcard out last Friday, we wanted to make sure that people started to think about this information. We know that a lot of people have been thinking and talking about, what that experience has been and continues to be for their children in schools, as we were on remote instruction, as we've been on hybrid instruction, what that actually looks like, and what that experience has been. Yesterday, on Monday, and I agree with you, Mrs. Friedel, I was on that meeting with you yesterday morning. It seems like a long time ago that meeting took place and we're having that discussion. But mid-morning or so yesterday, out from our public information office, went the email with some attachments, letting parents know that next time they logged into Genesis through the parent portal, that they would be asked to complete a pretty straightforward survey with just a couple of questions about whether or not they would want to send their children into school 4 days per week. There was a letter from me, there was a couple of backup documents. One was about ventilation protocols in our schools, and one was some more details about what could it possibly look like in our classrooms, depending upon how many students wanted to come back 4 days a week. One of the big things we want people to be aware of is you do that, we may hit a threshold in some of our classrooms where we cannot maintain 6 feet of social distance between all of the children. That's just a physical reality, based on the size of our classroom, based on the number of children. We've asked parents, from Monday of this week till Saturday of this week, to go through and to complete the survey. We'll start an analysis of those responses, formally on Sunday. And then the goal is that on Wednesday, probably Wednesday afternoon, which is March the 3rd, we will send information out to families to be able to say, Mr. Ovadia, we know that in your child's classroom, we're not going to be able to maintain 6 feet of social distancing. And then be able to say in other classrooms, yeah, we're pretty confident based on the numbers, we can maintain 6 feet of social distancing when we're assigning children to their seats. Now, understand there are always going to be times in schools that children, just like when we go to stores, just like when we go to religious services or that we're out, where that 6 feet of social distancing does not always exist as kids pass in a hall or as they pass in a classroom. That's going to happen. So we want to make sure that parents have had the opportunity to look at that, to think about it, right? And that they can weigh in with their perspective in terms of what they think they would like to do. We did ask parents, do you want your child to be on full remote instruction? Do you want them to do 4 days in school? And again, it's still the abbreviated school day. We're not looking at changing the time, except for the high school, which Naomi and I think Alex mentioned. We are looking at a break in the middle of the day for the kids at the high school level because of the time that they are starting, or to have them on the 2 days of hybrid. And again, our tentative date to be able to start this is Tuesday, March the 9th. We will continue the Mondays as the collaborative learning days at all 3 levels. Certainly, we will continue to talk about that as we move forward. But as we make this change and look to make this change for March 9th, it's just for those 4 days per week. And this is an ongoing and an evolutionary process. We take the words, the experiences that we receive from our teachers, the certified professionals, our support staff, the administrators, about what the experience is and about what they are doing. They are the master craftsmen that are in those classrooms. They're the experts that are there. And we weigh what they say and what the input is that they have about what's taking place. We take in what our parents share with us and share with us in a variety of ways. Some parents share information at a board meeting like this very publicly. Some send emails. Some talk to teachers. They talk to the principals. They come through the Zoom PTA. We have added 2 parents to each one of the return to learn committees, 2 at the elementary, 2 at the middle, and 2 at the high school, right? So there's more direct conversation about that perspective. We take all of that together. Our goal, honestly, as a district, I believe is the same thing that each individual family has. And that's that we can provide the best possible quality education for the children and a safe environment, right? We all want the same thing. What those parameters are and how that looks, people have lots of different perspectives on that. We encourage people to continue to share their perspectives and to share their thoughts on where it is. We will continue to work with the Camden County Department of Health. In fact, we've invited the Camden County Department of Health to come out to the district. They'll make site visit next week. Just waiting on the dates and the times to look in some of the schools and in some of the classrooms where we believe that we may have rooms where we can't maintain 6 feet of social distancing. So they can give us recommendations about what to do and how to follow that up and what that means. They will come out. We will also have from the New Jersey Assembly, Lou Greenwald and Pam Lampett will be coming out to visit schools to see what it looks like as we work to transition to 4 days for some of our students. Jim Beach, who's our state senator, Commissioner Capelli from the Camden County Commissioners will come out to see us as well. And again, we think that it's important that we have these elected officials, the ones that are making decisions at the local level and at the state level, that they see what it actually looks like within our schools, that they can see our children in the classrooms, they can see our professionals, they can see our support staff, they can see what the impact is. And that is twofold, not just the impact of what COVID means and what that looks like within our schools, but also about funding. We had, Mrs. Sugars went through some information about our budget and about our funding. Fair funding in Cherry Hill has long been an issue. It's not something that just started over the last decade. It has existed for decades that we've been underfunded. The voices of people in our community sharing in and reaching out to our elected officials, to people at the state level, mean a great deal. On Thursday evening, there'll be a Cherry Hill Fair Funding Committee meeting. There's information about it. You look on the website and you can find Cherry Hill Fair Funding. They are linked from our district website, or just do a Google search, or whatever browser you use for Cherry Hill Fair Funding, and you can link to them and find out the information for the meeting. But we are always encouraging more people within our community to be involved and to share their voices at the state level. It makes a difference. We are a very large community, a very large school district. Your voices as community members, as family members, will make a difference. And I have one other ask for you as a community. As you know, because we shared a letter, I did a letter 2 weeks ago on behalf of all the superintendents in Camden County to the governor about asking him to help us get our staff members vaccinated. I penned a follow-up letter today that'll go out to him tomorrow because we have not yet gotten a response. One of the greatest things that we could achieve as a community is if our voice collectively could be heard and that the state could do something so that our people that work in our schools, our teachers, our counselors, our educational assistants, our secretaries and custodians, our administrators, if we can work to get them vaccinated, what a difference that would make in terms of how people feel, in terms of what they think, and to show that there truly is that commitment that people want to help to support getting schools open in a safe and secure manner. So please share your voices, reach out to our legislators, reach out to the governor, tell them it's so dramatically important. We have so many skilled nurses that are here in our school district. We have offered our school sites here in Camden County to be sites to be able to do it for the educators. So again, if you can share your voice in that manner, it's always greatly appreciated. I'm thankful to the people that have been involved. And again, please make sure you thank your kids' teachers, you thank the secretaries, administrators, you thank the custodians and educational assistants, the therapists, the nurses, the people that continue on a daily basis to work harder than I think they ever have in their lives to continue to provide this education for our children. I'm grateful for what they do on a daily basis. I know because I hear from so many of you that you are and how appreciative you are. Please continue to say that. It can never be said too many times. It can never be appreciated too much by the staff in our buildings. So thank you, Mrs. Neary.
Great, thank you. So that brings us now to the action agenda. And I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Matlack to move the curriculum and instruction agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. 14.1, approval of attendance at conferences and workshops for the 2020-21 school year. 14.2, approval of out-of-district student placements for 2020-21 school year. 14.3, approval of the African American Studies course for the 2021-2022 school year. 14.4, resolution approving an extraordinary unspecifiable services contract with Hunneman Professional Development for teacher professional development services. 14.5, approval of special education settlement agreement. Do I have a second?
I second Ms. Matlack.
Thank you. I'm having trouble seeing people's hands.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Okay, are there any comments or questions from the board members?
Mrs. Stern.
Thank you, Dr. Malash.
I just, as a board member, wanted to respond. We had a lot of public comments tonight about 14.3, approval African American Studies course. And I just really want to say that this is a really important topic, and it's a really important time, and to me, it's a really important move for us to make as a board. You know, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people for recently and in the past about, you know, why this course, why not, you know, what about other groups are, you know, who are from other backgrounds, face other challenges, other social justice issues. And, you know, there are valid, important pieces for many, many groups. The origin of African Americans in this country is a different origin experience from many other groups in this country. And I think, you know, for a long time, it's just time for us to make sure that we are not just focusing on incorporating African American history into our curriculum, but there's also a focus in this class about not just racism, not just history, but also about contributions of African Americans, issues that are unique to the African American communities throughout our country and in a local area. And I just think, you know, we have to, there are different reasons for this class versus other classes. And I think there's going to be, I think, a wonderful synergy coming out of a class, in a district that offers a class like this, to other classes that will continue to address other social justice issues and other groups. It will only enhance this. And I think this is a really important class for all of our students, not just a group of students, although we have heard very strong and powerful voices of many of our students and former students. So to me, I think, you know, our job as the board is to ensure that our students all of our students are getting an excellent education and being able to achieve. And this is going to, I believe, enrich many, many, many of our students' lives, especially the ones who choose to really engage in this class and who can, you know, I think there's just going to be a great benefit to this. I'm Dr. Mahan's asked at the last meeting, you know, please trust in us that we will ensure that our students who struggle have different learning issues and struggle with learning, who this will be a mandatory course for all of our students, that we will ensure that the class is accessible for those students. And Dr. Mahan, I'm with you on that. And I look forward to ensuring that all of our students and the ones who may struggle with learning, aren't in a position to have to ask to be opted out of the class, but instead can actually find a way to access the material and be successful as well, because there's so much to offer in this class. So those are just my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mrs. Neary or Dr. Malash, can you help me out with hands, please?
Yes, Ms. Elmer Stratton has her hand up and Ms. Rydell has her hand up.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I was trying to hit the mute, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna try to speak without bursting into tears, but this is very hard. I will say what I would love for us to do is to take the focus off the fact that we'll be the first at anything, and instead take the focus and place it on the fact that we are acknowledging and we are understanding and we are giving a voice to a population of students that have been very clear that there is a need for them to be seen. There's a population of us in this community, though it may be small, 6 to 8%, but that 6 to 8% demands to be seen and heard. And as somebody that has been in Cherry Hill since 7th grade, 6th grade, 5th grade, whatever it was that we moved back to this town, I will tell you that it is a long road to be in this district and to always be the only, and to have to be in classrooms where you are the only, and then to have history that is only acknowledged once a month, 1 month out of the whole year. So I will say the conversation is not about this district being the first and being the greatest to make this decision this evening, but this is about our district taking a stand and saying that we see you, we value you, and we want to learn more. And then, you know, the other thing I want to continuously add is that this is just one step, because it's taken us 30 years to get to here, from the 90s when we were just saying, can you please just acknowledge us by not having books that only call me one word. And so for us to be now moving to this point, this is a big deal, but I will say that it is just one step in several more steps that we should make, that we need to make, that we need to acknowledge. And we should be most focused on making this vote this evening, but then holding people accountable for the next steps that follow. Because I don't want to be the third person on this board and still feel like the only. I don't want us to have this conversation 20 years from now with just the fourth African-American that sits on this board. I want us to make change. And then the last thing I will say is that it's never about us not acknowledging other cultures. It's never about us not acknowledging other people's genocides. It's not a conversation of comparison. It's a conversation of acknowledgement. And this is the conversation at this moment about this culture. And it does not mean that anything else is unimportant or unseen, but it means that we are addressing this issue in this time period at this time. So everyone, please just vote with that in mind this evening. And thank you guys for allowing me to show a moment of vulnerability, because I want my community to know that I make all decisions fairly and unbiasedly. But this is one that I can't take off, because I can never walk in a door and not be a Black woman. And I can never live in this community and not be a Black woman. So I must share, and I must let you know that I am acknowledging and speaking on behalf of my culture and my family in this moment. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stratton. And I believe Mrs. Friedel also had something she wanted to say.
Well, first, I want to thank Mrs. Stratton for that heartfelt conversation. And I hear you. And I actually also wanted to thank our students who have been so vocal and have expressed so much of themselves to the board, to cultural proficiency, to their classmates. We hear you. I am proud to sit here tonight. I truly am. You know, and again, Dr. Mahan, I look forward to hearing how this curriculum, if passed in a few minutes, or when passed, will evolve. And as Ms. Stratton said, I really am hopeful that this is not the end, that this is the beginning, that we see more integration in our preschool through high school curriculum, that we look at social justice, that we, you know, have these conversations, and, you know, that we see each other. We each bring something to the table, and I look forward to where Cherry Hill is going.
Thank you, Ms. Friedel. Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
I don't see any others, Ms. Snetland.
Thank you very much. That being said, Mrs. Sugars, I will turn it over to you for the vote.
Okay, I'm going to open up the online voting. Board members, you may cast your votes.
Mrs. Sugar?
Yes. Yes, Mrs. Tong.
Yeah, for me, everything's yes, except for 14.3, I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, duly noted.
Thank you.
All right, so it's a unanimous vote other than the exception of Mrs. Tong abstaining on 14.3.
Mrs. Neary, before you move on, I just want to thank the board. This has been, the discussion has taken place during the course, you know, intensely since last July, has been very beneficial. There's been a lot of people that have been involved. And again, I'll go back to an incredibly special thank you to the students. The power and the value of student voice, of listening, of having them actively engaged and involved, truly is the difference maker in terms of what we are doing. And as I talk to kids and talk to many of the adults, our generation, those of us that are adults, our generation obviously has not done a great job up to this point. So I'm incredibly thankful to the students and to their advisors for being willing to stand up, to speak up and to speak out, and to continue to be involved and to be engaged. Dr. Mahan, who is one of our assistant superintendents, you know, who earlier was the director of curriculum, although that still falls under her responsibility, has taken on the responsibility of guiding this work, you know, and kind of coalescing it all together. So I just want to ask if Dr. Mahan has anything that, you know, with the passing of this, which I think, again, is so incredibly valuable for who we are and what we are, Dr. Mann, if there's anything you'd like to share.
Absolutely, Dr. Malash. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to the board and to the community. I am overwhelmed with joy this evening, knowing that I will have the opportunity to move this course forward. And I was taking notes as we were hearing all of the public comments this evening. And I just want to reiterate some of them that were shared tonight. We heard from Serena Goodwin and Yoni Yaris, and they talked about the opportunity to course correct lack of knowledge that has permeated our society and to produce kids who have a balanced view of history for today's kids and future generations. That we're acknowledging a population of our students who have been asked to be seen. We see you, we value you, and we're holding people accountable. And to Mrs. Elmore Stratton, I am honored to be the person that you will be holding accountable to ensure that our students' voices continue to be heard, that they are seen, and that they are valued. I want to personally thank several students, and I will not be able to name all of them. And you know, when you start naming people, someone is always forgotten. So blame it on my head and not my heart. But to Obina, Joy, Zandria, Noah, Reese, Danielle, and Michaela, thank you for holding us accountable to ensure that you are seen, that you are heard, and that you are valued within Cherry Hill Public Schools. And I hope that you will continue to push me to ensure that all of those things occur. We have already started some of this work because irregardless of the vote tonight, it was something that we felt as a district that we needed to include African-American history across our curriculum and keep the conversation focused in on race equity. So on February 12th, we had a phenomenal in-service day with our English teachers and our social studies teachers at the secondary level. And I just want to publicly thank Dr. Walter Grayson from Monmouth University, Dr. Dontrese Allison from Stockton University, Dr. Herman Beavers from the University of Pennsylvania, and Mrs. Stephanie James Harris from the Amistad Commission for coming and presenting to our teachers. The response from the educators who were assembled in that room was overwhelmingly positive and has started us down the path to ensure yet again that our students are seen, heard, and valued. My final comment is there is work to be done, and this is not the last action to be taken, but the first step, and let the journey begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. Or thank you, Dr. Mann, but thank you, Mrs. Neary, for letting us share.
Dr. Malash, I'm glad you got me straight there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mahan. Next, that brings us to business and facilities, and I will turn that to Mrs. Schultz to move forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, financial reports. Number 2, resolution for the award of transportation. Number 3, approval of Cherry Hill McKinsey Vento DCP&P students going out of district for the 2020-2021 school year. And number 4, acceptance of donations. Do I have a second? Mr. Avadio, are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
All right, I have opened up the online voting.
Mrs. Sugars, I need to abstain to Beata Home Health on the bill list.
Okay.
It's been missing for quite some time. Well, but it is back. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And that brings us to human resources. And I will turn that, I feel bad, I'll turn that to Mrs. Schultz to move as well.
The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointment certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, leaves of absence certificated. Number 6, leaves of absence non-certificated. Number 7, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 8, other compensation certificated. And number 9, other motions. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack, are there any questions? Again, I am seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I have opened up the online voting for Board members, you may cast your votes. Okay, we have a unanimous vote.
Mrs. Neary, I apologize for interrupting again. Can I just make two quick comments? First, there are two items that I want to highlight that were just approved by the board tonight. The first one, I'll do the second one first, which is 16.9, where the board just approved sending Dr. Morton's contract as assistant superintendent to the executive county superintendent for review. The way that it works in New Jersey is the board has to approve having the contract submitted to be reviewed by the county office. Once the executive county superintendent approves it, then the board will act to appoint Dr. Morton to the position. So that'll occur at a later meeting. But I want to thank the board for support, and I think you made a great decision. The other one is I'm very excited to introduce Ms. Caitlin Mallory, who is with us this evening, who the board just approved as our new Director of Special Education. As you all know, because we've discussed it, it's been more than a decade since we have had a dedicated Director of Special Education in the Cherry Hill Public School District. Ms. Mallory is with us tonight. If we were in the room, she'd be at the microphone, but I brought her in. She currently is a Director of Student Services at Northern Burlington School District up in Northern Burlington County. Prior to that, she was Director of Special Services in Florence Township School District. And before that, a teacher in Vineland. She's a teacher of special education. She's ABA trained. We're really excited that she's joining us. Ms. Mallory, if you want to share a few words and introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, I would. Thank you so much for the opportunity to say something tonight. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't just express my gratitude to Dr. Mahan and the board for approving the African American Studies course this evening. I agree that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I have to say already, I'm proud to work in the Cherry Hill School District. So I wanted to say that. I'm also humbled and grateful to be approved as the Director of Special Education this evening. I want to thank Dr. Malash, Ms. Wethington, and the Board of Ed for selecting me to serve the students, staff, and school district community. I want to assure you that this is a position that I take very seriously. I've been an advocate for students for 17 years since I was a classroom teacher in special education, and my passion has only grown. I look forward very much to the opportunity to work with the administration, staff, and community in Cherry Hill. And thank you again so much.
Ms. Mallory, we're looking forward to you arriving. April 26th is circled on everybody's calendar.
Great.
Take care. All right, Mrs. Neary, back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have policy and legislation. I'll turn that over to Ms. Friedel.
The superintendent recommends, and I move the following: 17.1, second reading of policies. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack? Any questions? I can't see in the boardroom.
There are no questions here, Ms. Friedel.
Okay, seeing none. Mrs. Sugars?
All right, I have opened up the online voting for board members. And we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, that brings us to strategic planning. And did we have any items for discussion this evening, Dr. Malash? I know there's no items for vote.
I don't know that we do. Can I do it?
Mr. Lyon?
I thought I was going to do a little bit of a recap.
Yeah, okay,
absolutely. So yeah, there's nothing to vote on today. But I wanted to kind of like, just an accountability piece, talk about a couple things. The first is the next time we meet as a full board that's not with NJSBA, we have asked Bob Garrison to go through a deficit model of what's missing in what this board likes to call the full picture. Thought being that things will flow out of that full picture, that we don't want to look at ahead of that. And I think that's reasonable, but that would be March 9th. As we know from last time, we have asked administration to look at middle and elementary school lines and a plan for potentially changing those that will wait, as Dr. Malash told us, past budget season to be looked at in April or May. But at that point, we do need to, evaluate that as a board and then potentially talk with the community about what that means in real terms. That's where strategic planning is going to lead configuration for this academic year. The other committees want to look at it, it's great, but we'll be done on that piece. The overall timeline for a bond process, as I've mentioned quite a few times, we would be looking at the first possible date of a bond going out, September 2022. Now, this board has asked Ms. Sugars to really lead the process of figuring out what gets us from here to there. But what we do know is if we're going to be ready for that timeline, we need all the final projects approved by our group by January of 22. So essentially we need that done in 10 months. So when we said that was an aggressive timeline, it still is. It's getting more aggressive by the day. So just so we know that. The new topic we'll be looking at next week, But the only other thing I thought that there might be some comment on is, town halls, right? We could certainly have our March 15th town hall. We don't have a consensus as to what that would be necessarily. That's something we can talk about in committee, but we've had quite a few town halls. I don't know if I don't know what the feedback might be, but if there is feedback, I guess this would be an interesting forum for the whole board to think about it. And that's it. That kind of puts us into time and into our current project plan. I think, as you can imagine, looking at referendum will be more and more of the work of strategic planning kind of going forward. We had a little bit of a hiatus while Bob Garrison kind of got his hands around the full picture to be able to present, but that's basically more or less, I think, where we are. With that, any comments or thoughts, concerns?
I just have a question. You mentioned town halls. I'm newer to the board. I don't know how normally the town hall topics have arisen. Do they usually arise out of committee, or do they usually arise out of the full board meetings, or?
I would say there is no norm. I would say the first town hall that was part of a series really was October.
Yeah, the first three, November. The first three that we did were about return to learn, right, and what the schedule looked like. We put together a format, and a tentative schedule that would take us through February, March, April, May, and then kind of left it to look to see where we were. The most recent one was on the budget. We had the budget discussion a week ago. So we deviated a little bit from what that initial schedule was. So it could come from the committees, it could come out of the full board. We set tentative dates of the third Monday in each of the months. So for instance, in March, when the next one is scheduled, it's scheduled for the 15th March. So it's on that off week in between. First week of the month, we have committee meetings. Second week, we have the work session. Third week, the town hall. Fourth week, the action meeting.
I mean, I think given, a lot of the discussions at all of the town halls, I think the, very relevant, consistent topic that continues to be an important dialogue with the community is about, where we are at with our learning during the pandemic. And I just think it's an ongoing, no matter what town hall we're having, it definitely comes up in community conversation. So I certainly think there's need for another one to focus regarding, this very relevant current topic. And there's a lot of discussion, although it's quite far away, we do have to start, people are talking about, we do have to start planning for, what will be in several months in the fall. So I guess I makes sense to me that that's what's going on in the community. That's probably what we really need to make sure we're talking about. There's also a lot of discussion in the community about special education. And we have a new special education, to get the title right, director. Thank you. Perhaps it would make a lot of sense to also, this is probably a good time to have a town hall dialogue just regarding, topics related to that the community have a dialogue about it with the board. So those are two thoughts I have. They're a little bit different from the kind of strategic planning bond, but I guess everything's related, so.
Well, I mean, you bring up one thing, which is something I thought might be worthy of a board discussion. So a town hall is not, in my view, I mean, maybe other people have a different view, but it's not an opportunity to grill the administration on what people think about their situations. It asks us, I think, to look at a bigger picture. But the problem with that, frankly, is, like, for instance, on March 15th, we could talk about what a basic referendum process looks like. But, you know, to what end? I mean, as a board, we haven't even seen the full picture today. We'll have just seen it March 9th. So I feel like from a strategic planning perspective, we won't be together as a board, and certainly not as a board administrative team for March 15th. Now, if people think that we're going back to school 4 days a week and it should be 5, to me, that's not a town hall. I mean, they really, you know, I mean, what would our best advice be, right? Go to their principals, go to their building level to figure out, you know, what is, or, you know, people have forums online and people can write us notes. I guess the question really before us is, town halls are fairly new. Do we know how many people watched our last town hall?
Roughly 50.
Okay, so we've seen a humongous drop.
Yeah, there's been a drop. I mean,
that was my question.
We did the first one. There was about 1,500 people back in the fall on the first one. There's been substantive drop. I would say 100, 150-ish in round numbers. I think around, I would have to check. I don't remember the last one off the top of my head, the budget one. It was the smallest one, you know, the ones that we've done. Yeah, the first one was substantial.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't have necessarily an opinion here. I'm just saying, you know, are we, if people are, well, let me go another direction. If people are saying to us, you're having a discussion about the wrong topic, it seems like we should convene until the board agrees to a topic that we are fairly in alignment of. Otherwise, you know, if people wanted to hear my personal opinion, you know, they could ask, but people are not interested in Ben's opinion. Not really, right? So that's part of like acting as a, and I think, I suspect what we'll discuss tomorrow is that there's a lot of demands on the board members' time. If this is a value add and people say, look, I appreciate this engagement, is one thing. If the feedback is we went from 1,500 to 50 and people want to talk about something else, you know, the question then is the town hall correct and should we be doing them monthly? Because look, once we have this full picture and want input and, you know, and there's something to talk about, but I don't think we can brainstorm with the community in a town hall. I just don't, you know, I just don't see that working. And if neither side is happy with it, you know, so I just wanted to look, I wasn't part of the last town hall, you know, I did listen to it as a spectator, but just wanted to kind of get a sense because the idea really I thought was for strategic planning to kind of recommend topics for these town halls. But then the question is how do they operate? What's value add? And you know, what's putting us, you know, forward because, you know, either we are or we are. So I don't know if there are other thoughts.
Ben, I just wanted to go back because I think you kind of were touching on something that is important about the town hall is just the value that we're going to place on the time and the investment from everybody, from the administration, from the board members, and the community. So I would just be interested to figure out, I don't know if you can even do it in the thought survey, Dr. Malash, but just some type of a question that is, what is the expectation from the community? Because the whole reason we're doing these town halls is because that's the best avenue for back and forth dialogue. But if we're missing the mark on the town hall, then it is just invaluable. It truly, not to sound too direct or blunt, but then it's just turning into a big waste of everybody's time if we're just putting together town halls and it's like we're just missing the mark. So I don't know how we could gauge that in topics, or are we doing them too frequently? Like, would it be a better use of you know, if we pulse the community and it's, hey, all I want to talk about indefinitely is return to learn and what the fall looks like, then maybe we don't need to do them. We don't need to do them every month. So I don't know. I guess that's my only thing is that time is so precious to everybody. So if we can maybe narrow in on what those topics are, I don't know if the thoughts already have.
Absolutely, we could definitely put that as a thought exchange question and ask people, you know, what is it that you're looking to discuss? And again, the way that people can go in and rate that, it'll at least to give us a snapshot of these topics people are really interested in, these topics people are not interested in,
yeah.
to go through. Yeah, Mrs. Wilson, I can certainly work with thought exchange folks in developing something.
And maybe frequency. And frequency might be another good, like another just, hey, is monthly, you know, is monthly the right, would a 6 week stretch be better? Like, you know, so would every 2 months be? Yeah, I think that just would really help us gauge like the topics, the timing, so that we're not just, you know, missing the mark. Yeah, I think that would be good information again.
This is Neary's
Yeah, I was going to say I agree, because my understanding was the town hall was the opportunity for some type of dialogue, because our board meetings are not structured as such, to provide that for the community. They get public comment, but it's not public discussion with the community. So I think we should understand, you know, what makes most sense, what they're looking for, and be sensitive to that and the concerns they want to bring forward, before we just say we're not going to do it right now. Understanding there is a lot happening, and there is a lot of the administration's time and focus, obviously, on the return to learn, and that being most critical. So I think we should do that sooner rather than later, because I don't want to just take away the opportunity for that dialogue that we don't really have in other forums.
Mrs. Arroyo?
Yeah. Yes.
Just thank you. I just want to like the premise or the purpose of community engagement, regardless of the amount of people you're engaging with, you're still getting some form of feedback. You're still sharing information that is important to some part of the community. Now, I do like what Ms. Schultz brought up. I think we talked about that early on when we first started talking about what town halls would look like, having a more of like some input from the community to let us know what they want to hear about. So that should be hopefully is priority, and you are able to move on that. And right now there are a lot of major things happening that we've been talking about. And major things that our community is focused on, and we might have different viewpoints of what should come first. And so that being said, I know it's a lot of time on everybody's part, but that's our job as in these positions to be able to share this information. And if it does take time, you know, there's this concept of time equity. So we have to make sure that whatever we feel whatever we may personally feel about how we're sharing that or what platform, we still need to engage, and we still need to provide this information in some format. I do actually really enjoy the town halls, and maybe some topics are just more interesting for some folks than others, but they're extremely important, especially in community engagement, and especially in moving forward with strategic planning and outlining what the future of our district looks like.
And anyone else want to lend a voice to anything? I mean, I will say, just as maybe a closing thought, that of the 50 people that joined, half the people who commented said it was the wrong topic. So, I mean, I definitely appreciate, but I think we must have some guidance from the community. I mean, I'll talk about anything, as long as we're talking about my personal opinion, you know, I'll go, and people who know me, I mean, I'll go hour after hour, but you know, the question is, I want people to feel it's productive for their time. I've already given up enough. I'm happy to do more.
I think that's the key, Ben, is it should be productive use of time, and I think that's key. I'll talk about anything.
So,
I think the survey will clearly gauge that.
Right.
Great suggestion, you know. And super, I mean, even like a short and sweet, you know. Here's some topics and then another, you know.
The interesting thing about thought exchange as a platform is it's good for this kind of thing. People can suggest topics. We'll see how many ratings. Yes. So okay, so we'll look to do that in sort of the
and timing, you know.
Yes, right. For frequency of the town hall.
Better word, yeah. Frequency.
Cool. All right.
I think you said it first before. So.
Ms. Schultz is on a roll today. So all right, back to you, Mrs. Neary.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that brings us to new business. Did anyone have items for new business?
Yeah.
Ben doesn't have anything.
So in the spirit of I can talk forever. So Mrs. Matlack brings up a good point about other boards are supporting initiatives of putting, you know, essentially teachers before smokers in the state of New Jersey. I think Dr. Melange is on board with that. I think we should consider a board resolution to that effect. Why not us?
Yeah, that's something we just, Ms. Matlack.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I was considering bringing up as well. And I believe New Jersey School Boards has a sample resolution that we can take a look at and use or tweak to suit our needs and what we want to say and how we want to say it. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll help reinforce the message that Dr. Melange sent on behalf of other administrators.
I'll include the sample resolution in the memo.
Okay, great.
Okay. Ms. Selmore Stratton has her hand up as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So being a new member, don't know how we go about doing this, or if this is a thing we can do, or if I should wait and ask this at the board retreat tomorrow. So I'm just putting this out there. How would we go about if we wanted to make a suggestion for an additional committee for our board? And is there a process to that, or what we need to do, or are we only limited to just the already established committees that we have? Not that any of us want more work to do, but there's more work to do, and I'm holding myself to it. But I just was thinking about a possibility of us adding a committee that could be one that touches on youth voice and engagement, specifically looking at that throughout the year. I don't know what the exact term of that committee would be called, or what the name would be called, but I would love for us to be a little bit more cutting edge with it and actually have the committee comprised of students, with a student being a chair and one of us board members being a vice chair to that. Just something you know, this is a recurring theme across all youth development world right now, is really allowing students to be in a space where they can lead and be heard, but not in a tokenist way, in more of a shared decision-making manner. So just didn't know if there's a way that I formally propose that or ask that, or what I'm supposed to do.
Okay, thank you. I think we can discuss that, and Ms. Friedel wants to, I can see she's.
So I love the idea of students being part, but I believe the policy right now is that the only students who can participate in board committees are the student reps from East and West. So I think that to have this conversation, we probably need to lean into Paul as well. And would that require, you know, if the board was in agreement, you know, policy changes and so forth to make that happen? Or would it be more of a committee like cultural proficiency? I'm sorry, that's the only one that is coming to my mind right now.
Depends on the nature of the committee, whether you want to create a standing committee in the nature of the ones you have now, or whether you want to have a special committee that's charged with a particular task in terms of investigating and reporting. So those would be things to be discussed. If you want to create a standing committee, you would have to amend your bylaws. But the appropriate method would be for that to come up at a work session for a discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green.
Sure.
I'll work on a actual real presentation as to why I'm asking that, but I just didn't know how we go about doing that. So sure. Thank you so much, everyone.
No problem, thank you.
Ms. Stern has her hand up too, Mrs. Neary.
Okay, sorry, I was taking note on that. Ms. Matlack, you had your hand first, is that what?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, honestly, I do not know because I can't see
Oh,
who is having as their hand up, but just real quickly, I wanted to just add that since we're having Mrs. Gwen Thornton come tomorrow night to do some training with the board, that would be a very appropriate question to direct to her on you know, how we can do it, what the parameters would be, you know, for a board committee, you know, board committees typically being the work of the board. So she would be a great resource, Corinne, to bring that up tomorrow with her. And then we can go from there with Mr. Green's advice as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, thanks. Ms. Stern.
Just since we're in the moment, Mr. Green, is it possible, to Mrs. Stratton's point or thought, is it possible to expand the number of student representatives we have if we wanted to move in that direction?
Yes, that could be done.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I had one other item in speaking of the resolution. Is it something the board would want to discuss regarding a resolution or some type of letter? I don't know if you have to do a resolution or not, Mr. Green, but regarding the funding. I know that they're announcing the budget, but it's preliminary and it's preliminary aid numbers. You know, would we want to send something reinforcing the importance of continuing to fund S2 and Cherry Hill?
That typically is done through a resolution. That's the standard.
Okay.
If you don't have time to do that, then certainly a letter can be circulated among the board, just so that everybody is in consensus with the president sending that.
Right.
If there is time, then the traditional method is, it's more formal, is to actually adopt a resolution and send that.
Okay. And I think it's been done in the past. I think,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Matlack, you've done resolutions in the past on funding and Senate.
Yes, we have, yes.
So I think while the budget is fresh, that might be worth doing. So Dr. Malash, could we, is that something we could do and send out in the memo as well so everybody could see it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can work on a draft of a resolution, you know, and then have it, I can put it out this weekend. We can have it for discussion during committees next week so that it's ready to go for the 9th. So the board to act on it, you know, will be the next time that we can take action.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's all I had. Did anyone else have any other items? Okay. And that'll take us to old business. Were there any items under old business? Okay.
Mr. Ovadia?
Oh.
Yeah, so I don't want to lose the narrative necessarily, but for a long time we talked about what the parameters would be or timing might be to return to, so let's say to return to board, let's put in the nomenclature of the day. I don't necessarily feel strongly one way or another, but in one sense, we're now looking at, you know, potentially 4 days a week for students. That obviously impacts the staff. Do we want to think about, you know, what our own, you know, go, no-go type stuff would be? Or I guess the other way to do it would be, do we want to think about kind of a standing remote option? So I don't know, but I know we spent a lot of time talking about this in months past. I haven't heard it recently, so wanted to get some kind of like opinion or thought by anyone, I guess.
And I would want to lean on Mr. Green too, because I think there's some regulation or something around attendance in person. I'm not sure, and then what that looks like, because obviously you would need a change of venue.
Board member attendance in person?
No, community. I'm sorry, public attendance.
Oh, yeah, public attendance. Yes, we're actually still waiting. I actually had written to the Division of Local Government Services on their proposed regs because I thought they were a little vague about that. But what they've said in their draft regulation that they proposed is that if you admit if you have a board meeting in physically, you must admit the public. It's not clear whether that means whether you have a quorum or whether you have less than a quorum. So with less than a quorum, as you have tonight, for example, physically in the room,
right.
The presumption I would think would be, although they didn't make this clear, that you do not have to admit the public. And then the other question becomes, at what point do you have to create a venue so that everybody can be admitted, or is there flexibility to limit the number based upon the public health emergency guidelines? So we're still waiting for some clarification on some of those issues.
Okay, thank you. That's what I would wonder, the impacts of that as well.
Of course, hopefully at some point this emergency ends and then we can not have to deal with that question so much. As then it's easy, because then if you can have a hybrid meeting still, but then you just admit the public fully to the physical meeting.
And then we would need to do some policy adoption, I would think, as well, right? Because there's nothing in any of our policies to that effect.
Yes, that's a good point too. Those would have to be looked at.
I'm sorry, as a follow-up, so if we get to where we have 5 board members in person, we would have to then be in a space large enough to admit public. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, it's not clear, to what extent. I mean, you would have to admit a certain amount of the public. The question becomes, do you have to admit everybody? Now, in the latest executive order, it was made clear that Board of Education meetings are not governed by the limitations in the executive order on indoor gatherings. But that doesn't mean that it would be prudent to permit the public to come into a space where they can't be socially distanced. So the question becomes, at what point do you have to then find another location for your meeting? There's a lot of questions there. Or can you say, we're going to admit the public up to a safe limit, and then everyone else has to watch remotely?
Remotely, yeah, that was kind of going to be my follow-up question, because I was also, the reason I was asking too about the number of board members was more as a kind of a piggyback on Ben's question, was for committee meetings. Just, maybe we can't get there for full board meetings, but just in the same vein, we're going back to school for 4 days. Is there like a creative solution for, like, if the chair of the meeting could come in, could we do like a live stream, or could we at least do committee meetings in the gym so that we could admit public if one board member was present, and do like a half live stream? I guess that was why I was kind of asking about, like, because I would assume committee meetings would follow the same guidelines as a regular board meeting, or is there flexibility there with committee meetings?
There's more flexibility, because the committee meeting, unless you have a quorum present, is not a public meeting. So you're not governed by the Open Public Meetings Act. So that's why you don't have to have minutes of a committee meeting. Committee meetings don't have to be public. There's much more flexibility, but you can certainly choose to do various options with respect to committee meetings. It's just that you don't have to create the kind of notice and abide by the other provisions of the statute if you don't have 5 board members present.
Okay, yes, because I was kind of thinking that too, like, maybe we aren't quite there with board meetings yet, but is there some type of a solution for some of our committee meetings that we aren't live streaming, like with using the gym space in Malvern, or so I don't know what the answer is, but I don't know if
that can all be discussed. I mean, that can all be talked about. That certainly can be explored.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't know if any board member has a strong opinion on talking about committee meetings one way or the other, but
I think we definitely need to have the conversation, and I think if we can live stream town hall meetings, then we definitely have a precedent to talk about also what our options are for committees. So maybe during the board retreat, I don't know if that's a place to talk about in the board retreat, or if it should be talked about here, but
that's a Paul question.
I don't know where we talk.
That's actually it's a fine topic for a board retreat. That would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Sure.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
Okay, did anybody have anything else?
Lori, I just have one more. I don't know if you can see my hand, so I figured.
Yeah, I'm struggling today too. What is it today? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Just, you know, I know we have an inordinate amount of things to deal with and topics to get to. One topic that came up earlier in the school year and hasn't come up recently, but as we're starting to plan for the end of the school year and the beginning of next year, I'd like to have a place to talk about the high school start time. I know the board in 2020 was talking about that. It's obviously much later this year. I don't know where that discussion, again, along Mrs. Stratton's same line. I'm not sure where that begins, if that could be in a committee. But just feel like it's time to it's been discussed in the community quite a bit.
I think Dr. Malash, wouldn't that be in CNI committee or?
Yes. Yes.
Good. I'm in that committee, so it's great.
Okay. No problem. Okay, so one last time, is there anyone else? And I can't see either for some reason, so.
There's nothing.
Nobody else on this side.
Okay.
And I don't see anybody on screen.
Okay, perfect. Well, then that brings us to the second public comment. And my screen just froze. Okay, there we go. Okay, this public comment is for any item and is still up to 3 minutes. And please state your name and address. And I will open it up. And the first one we have is a telephone number. I'm not going to state the whole number. So if you could please state your full name and address.
Okay, should I start?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Jeff Potowitz, 110 Kilburn Drive, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I have spoken and written about a newspaper article entitled "The Perfect Suburban School is Living a Financial Nightmare. Here's Who's to Blame." It's by Adam Clark, June 2018, updated May 2019. It starts, take a walk down Thorn Lane past the new houses with swimming pools and 3-car garages, and you would think you had arrived at the picture-perfect neighborhood elementary school. How did this happen? In an affluent South Jersey town with one of the region's highest average property tax bills. The answer is simple. Chesterfield school districts are getting cheated by the state, local officials say. Good news for the affluent Cherry Hill Chesterfield School District. They now receive $3,600 per student in direct state aid to education. This is a 400% increase since SFRA began. Cherry Hill School District receives $1,800 per student in direct state aid to education, an 18% increase since SFRA began. The numbers are approximate. Chesterfield is a K-6 school district which has 800 students. This district is part of the 7th through 12th grade Northern Burlington County Regional School District. The total student population in that district is about the same as Cherry Hill East High Schools alone. Their average population percentage is about the same as Cherry Hill East High School. That district's direct state aid education is about $14.1 million or $6,400 a student. The whole Cherry Hill School District, with about 10,800 students, receives $19.5 million or about $1,800 per student. One major tenet of FSRA was that direct state aid to education funds were supposed to follow the at-risk student into every district. Our community is being cheated, and we are facing a financial nightmare. You can read on the Cherry Hill District's website or find on the internet testimony of Sharon H. Josio, Cherry Hill Board of Education, dated March 20th, 2007. She spoke in front of a legislative committee. Our state, you will learn that we have been cheated by the state for 30 years. All the representatives knew it. It was in front of a legislative committee. Our state aid in 1988 through 1989 was $20.5 million, more than we have now. Over the next 8 years, we lost an average of $1.3 million per year, including a single year cut of $5.3 million. We are still paying for those state aid cuts today. Local officials strongly supported the Chesterfield School District. That was our local officials. also supported them. Good for them for getting the support. Leadership, please, please help us.
Thank you, Dr. Podowitz.
No.
Okay, next we have Rick Short.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, this is Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. I'd like to first reach out to board member Ms. Stratton. Ms. Stratton, there's only a few times at Cherry Hill board meetings do you hear somebody get emotional. And let me tell you this, this time I heard you, and I don't forget people that get emotional. All right, first off to start, I'd like to make some positive comments. I want to thank the board for your 4-day-a-week push. I also want to thank the board for doing a good job with window ventilation inside classrooms. I've looked at other schools and everyone in Cherry Hill seems to be doing it. The one thing I'm concerned about though is buses. The buses started strong, but now they're getting lax with ventilation, maybe because it was cold. Now let's get into some other things that you're doing awesome. Your sporting operations with parents is going very well. I've been to 2 events, very professional, very well run. Now the problems. I'm glad you guys talked about subcommittees tonight, but are you guys insane to think that you're going to start talking about a bond when you don't even have a cost or draft for the public and you haven't even talked to the ad hoc committee? Remember the old bond ad hoc committee? I cannot believe you would have a town hall on a bond that you don't even know the cost. It's utterly idiotic. I'd also like to talk about the recent comments about ventilation. You mentioned in the notes that the air conditionings are set in low in the classrooms in the winter, but what you forgot to mention is that you don't want the fins facing downward, blowing on their children, spreading possible COVID. You also mentioned in your note about ventilation about coils freezing. Well, right now there's no chance of them freezing. So I still would like to hear a comment from Dr. Malash that he's following CDC guidelines and pumping extra air 2 hours before and 2 hours after. Also, it's the same question each time. Why do Philadelphia schools test? Why do they have the ability to test students and teachers? Why do Pittsburgh teachers and students have the ability to test? And let's go back to the $10,000 locking system in vestibules. Why are you not going to put this in the budget? It's crazy not to make our schools safer. And why are you allowing doors, interior doors, not lockable?
Thank you, Mr. Short.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have Kelly Gasly. Please state your name and address.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Kelly Gasly, 501 Gatewood Road. First, I just wanted to thank Dr. Malash for the follow-up that he mentioned is coming tomorrow on vaccinations and trying to get our teachers vaccinated, which is really so important and certainly frustrating that the state has not done more to prioritize teachers for vaccinations. So I appreciate that Cherry Hill is starting to try to lead on this, and will reach out and voice my support to the governor as well. I also really want to thank the district for moving to hopefully this 4-day-a-week plan, which I think is a really important first step in trying to get our children back into the classroom more. I have 2 elementary school children, so it's I particularly see how much they need to be in the classroom. I believe that it's really important to simultaneously be planning for what September is going to be like. I believe it's Ms. Stern who mentioned this. It's going to be here before we know it. And we really need to be thinking creatively and approaching the next school year differently than we've been able to this year. I feel particularly strongly that there needs to be a remote only option for students, so that students who will be completely remote in the next school year have a dedicated teacher who is catering just to remote teaching and working specifically with those students. And I also think it is better for the kids who are in person to not have to be on a Chromebook constantly. So I really think it would be a really important move, and a place where Cherry Hill can really use its larger size to its advantage to possibly, for instance, span across a few schools. If there aren't, for instance, very many first graders who are remote only in one school, combine them with another elementary school so you can have a remote only cohort and really leverage our teacher resources as much as possible. My last point is just on the discussion earlier about town halls. As a parent during this pandemic, I cannot tell you how important it is to have a town hall and to hear from the community on what they're experiencing with return to learn, and to hear back from Dr. Malash and the board members at that town hall as to their responses. I don't think that can be underscored or underappreciated enough. And I just think that it's really important that those town halls continue and that there's more of them, especially as we move into a new 4-day-a-week plan soon. It's really important to hear from the community how it's going and what changes may need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Patricia Mccargo.
Anyway, earlier when I spoke, I did not give my name or my address, and it is Pat Mccargo, 991
Thank you.
Drive in Cherry Hill. And I don't know if I said that I wasn't speaking on behalf of any group, but I had to say thank you, thank you, thank you to the board. It's been a long journey for me. I've been involved in this process for more than 30 years. And Corinne, I felt everything you were saying to heart. I took it to heart because I've been there with my girls and I've been there with you. So thank you all for doing this and being courageous. And as Corinne said, it's the first step, but this I want you to know. I may be a grandmother, but I'm still gonna be around because every single one of these children in this community belong to me as well. So thank you again. Wish you the best. And thank you to Dr. Mahan and all those involved in pulling this together.
Thank you, Ms. McCargo. Okay, next we have Carolina Bevid. And just state your name and address.
Hi, Carolina Bevid, 1213 Cropwell Road. First, I wanted to say I'm really excited for the tentative plan to return students to 4 days of in-person learning. I'm also grateful that parent representatives were added to the We Return to Learn committee. Better late than never. I also would like to request We Return to Learn updates be on the agenda at board meetings, because as everyone mentioned, this is something that is on a lot of people's minds in the community. I agree with what Kelly said. The town halls are really important, and I'm glad to hear that the topics are being considered. Various topics are being considered, and community input would be welcome to hear what we want to talk about. And then my last comment is more of a question. I heard today that buildings are not allowed to use daily substitutes, that they're only using long-term substitutes that are already hired to work within those buildings. And I just wanted maybe somebody to confirm or deny that, because I know substitutes are at there's a shortage. So I just wanted some clarification on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Ryan Strasco. And state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Ryan Strasco, and I live at 1829 West Point Drive. I want to thank you guys for having a plan for 4 days a week of in-person learning. I think that, it's a great idea to get our kids back in the school more. I have 3 young children, a kindergartner, a first grader, and a third grader. I'm also a principal in Philadelphia that is dealing with some of the same issues that we're dealing with here in Cherry Hill. My concerns going forward are twofold. One, I'm going to be returning to in-person learning at some point in the not too distant future. And with SAC, my students were in SAC and my kids lived together, obviously in our home, and they were not allowed to sit near each other or play with each other at SAC or anything like that. So we did pull them out of the SAC program. So I had questions if there were any way to kind of revise some of the stuff with SAC so I could put my kids back in SAC when I have to return to work. And then my other concern is for September. What is the plan for September when we have kids return to school, and what is that going to look like? We have been exploring options of sending our children to private school, because when we have to return to work full time, we need to be able to appropriately plan for what our days are going to look like. So I was wondering when we were going to get some updates about what things might look like in September. And I did want to second what Kelly said with this idea of having a remote only option for students that choose to stay remote, because I do think that that's going to be great for the students that want to stay that way, the families that want to stay that way, and for the teachers so that they don't have to teach to a group of students in front of them and a group of students that are at home, and the kids don't have to be on the screens all day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strasko. Okay, and we have Adam Greenberg. And state your name and address, please.
Adam Greenberg, 508 Bryan Drive. First, I want to start out by saying thank you for beginning the 4 days in-person education. I also have 3 young children, just like Ryan before me, a 5th grader and 2 first graders. They are completely different on days that they attend in-person learning. They get a lot more out of the education in person than they do at home. And we're very excited to expand that. Additionally, what it will look like in the fall is very important to a lot of people. And similarly, we are looking at potentially going to a private school if we're not going to be back in person 5 days a week in Cherry Hill School District. So learning about that and understanding that sooner rather than later would be very helpful. Also, the town halls, we believe, are very important and a very good way of engaging the community on getting information and sharing information, and should continue. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Next, we have Lauren Greenberg. And state your name and address, please.
Hi, Lauren Greenberg, 508 Bryan Drive. I want to just echo what everyone said, and thank you for starting to bring our kids back to learning in the buildings more. One thing I wanted to ask about was, you keep saying it's a tentative plan. What is that based on? Is it based on if there's too many students that want to go back full time or 4 days a week that you won't be able to do it? Or is it more based on the health of the community and what's going on in the community? The other thing that I wanted to comment on, like the other people said, the discussion that was had earlier about town halls. As board members, you guys know what's going on in terms of return to learn. And we don't as a community. And that is the absolute number one thing that is on our minds as parents. What does school look like? How does this affect our kids? How does this affect our job? These are things that we think about every single day. And so, I understand you want to talk about other things, but it's always going to come back to that, and it's all related. So I think that the town halls are so important to continue. And I think that returning to learn should be one of the main topics of those town halls. You can discuss other topics, but I think that that's really super important to keep that as the number one topic for right now until things go back to normal. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greenberg. Next, we have Jamie Goodwin.
Hi, Jamie Goodwin, 112 Mansfield Boulevard South. I just wanted to jump back on and first share my joy at the new approved required African American Studies course for all our high school students. I also, however, as a Black woman myself, did feel and hear the deep grief and pain and the powerful words shared by Ms. Elmore Stratton. We must remember it has taken 30 years too long for us to finally say our students, to our students, that we see you and you matter. And I think right now in this unique moment, we must continue to tell our students that have long been forgotten that you matter. Your safety matters. We know that safety is much larger than just physical health, but includes the belief that your teachers really do care about your learning and your success. Your health matters, and that also means your mental health. So I wanted to just reiterate that that means seeing the needs of every student as relevant and important, especially students who are often forgotten, like the needs of our IEP and 504 students. I have seen firsthand the detriment it can be for students in classes where teachers appear unwilling or ill-equipped to support and implement IEP and 504 plans. And so we must make every effort to include in-class resource teachers or just support our teachers who feel ill-equipped to really provide an educational experience so all students can learn. I also wanted to reiterate the plan that I've been sort of suggesting, since we are in a moment that is unique burden on our students, that we make sure that we're not falling behind and seeing their health as including things like flexible deadlines and limits on the amount of work. People are having different kinds of workloads, some that seem outrageous for the moment that we're in. And just overall equity guidelines. I think this is super important because this is how we say that you matter. And we had some kind of plan before that we removed. I urge the board to consider creating equity guidelines so that we make sure that teachers remain in the boundary of seeing all students and having empathy be at the core of our teaching practice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Okay, and we have Melissa Vitelli.
Hi, Melissa Vitelli, 309 Hadley Drive. I just wanted to piggyback onto what Kelly and Ryan and Adam and Lauren and people said. I'm excited about this 4-day return to learn plan. I had a question as to why we're returning 4 days a week. I'm just wondering why Monday would stay a virtual day. Also regarding that it is a tentative plan, what if some classes can maintain distance and others cannot? Will that mean the entire school cannot return, or some can and some cannot? And then talking about September in the next school year, I brought this up at the beginning of this school year about having separate remote teachers and separate in-person teachers. And at the time, Dr. Malosh said that was not an option due to the size of the school. But now that we do have time to prepare, I really think it is important for the children and for the teachers who right now are doing so much extra work than necessary, and kudos to them, but I think it would be great for the kids in class to not be staring at computers and for teachers to really be able to focus on one curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Melissa. Please state your full name and address.
Hi, I'm Melissa Bush, 420 Lavender Hill Drive. First, I want to thank the board. For dedicating time to returning our children back to the classroom. It's long overdue. I request that the topic become a permanent agenda item until the pandemic is over. As for the plan, I would like to know why it remains tentative. You're aware of many families who have spoken up publicly and privately about adding more days in the classroom. What data from the surveys will prevent you from moving forward with the plans? Are your unions ready to move ahead with the 4 days of in-person learning plan if 6 feet of distance can't be maintained at all times? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Eric Goodwin.
Good evening again. I just wanted to take a moment to just thank each one of the board members for your vote on the African-American curriculum. I really, really appreciate that. And I believe that it's really going to have a dramatic impact on all the students in Cherry Hill. And it'll just really help people to really see and understand and be able to appreciate all the contributions throughout the history here in the US. So thank you very much for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Okay, and we have Sarah Jocelyn.
Hi. Hi, this is Sarah Jocelyn. I wanted to suggest that the town meeting would include not only a discussion of the return to learning plan, but also what would happen with assessments and the attendance pattern, and whether there's going to be a need for remediation or some other action for those who have had learning delays. I think it's extremely important to be talking about what's happening in September. So many people have to make plans for what's going to be happening in their own lives, especially parents of young children. I do urge you to consider the opportunities that happen to children outside of school, and especially for SAC. That's extremely important for parents who do work. And it's a consideration that the board should be thinking about. How are we going to operate that, and how will children have a period of time where they will have interaction? I thank you for the work of the board and your continued effort.
Thank you, Ms. Jocelyn. Okay, and finally we have Karen Wolf.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking my comment. I'd like to, first of all, echo the excitement about returning to 4 days a week per school. And I'm hoping that we can see them return for 5 days a week sometime soon. Moving forward, I'm calling basically to ask for much more transparency as we think about the end of the school year and especially September. Particularly when we look at the fall, it's going to help us as a community have more trust in the process and understand what's happening if the board and the district can be more transparent about how it's making its decisions. This includes the obstacles the district is facing, whether it be buildings or discussions about teacher safety or student safety or whatever it might be, but also the specific metrics that the district is using to decide whether students are going to be in the classroom or not. Up to this point, that kind of transparency has been lacking. And I think, as other people have said, one great way to provide this transparency is to make this a
Oh, did we lose?
It appears that Dr. Wolf dropped off, although now it looks like he's back on. I'm going to click him back on.
Okay.
I'm back on. Thank you. Sorry about that. I got kicked off.
No problem.
All right. As I was saying, one way to do this is by making this a regular agenda item on every board meeting, but also continuing to have regular town halls that are devoted specifically to the return to learn plan. Again, I think there's a lot of frustration in the community because we just don't know what's happening. If we think back to August, when all of a sudden it was announced that the students wouldn't be returning to the classroom. And if we think to this most recent change of switching back to 4 days a week, there really wasn't much notice given that this was about to happen or that the district was even considering this. And I think if we knew what you were thinking and why you were making the decisions, a lot of people would be less frustrated and would be willing to be more supportive of the district's approach to return to learn. So really more transparency going forward would make a huge difference for a lot of community members because we would feel just more informed about the decisions that you're making and would have more reason to trust that you're making the best decisions possible. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have another hand. Vitali Anbinder, and please be sure to state your name and address.
Hey, yes, it's Vitali Anbinder. I live on 30 North Syracuse Drive. I have a question. So what was the thought process? Why to go to 4 half days versus have the kids remain hybrid and then go 2 full days, or maybe even the Monday that's currently virtual, have every other Monday. That way you have a more likelihood of actually maintaining the 6 foot distance, and the kids would have a full day in school. And then the other 2 days, you could remain full day virtual, because I think it's a big drop off from September when the kids were in school full day to now for the last 3-4 months, they've been in school half a day. There's a lot of time being lost that I don't see them ever making up. And what was really what was the trade that was done? Why this is the next step? And I would also add, is there a next step after these half days? Are we going to go back to full day eventually in 2021? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Danny? And please state your full name and address.
Yes, Danny Elmore, 25 Birchwood Park Drive South, Cherry Hill. I want to, one, congratulate the board in voting for 14.3, the African American Studies course. As many of you might know, for about 30 years, I have been asking for a mandatory course in Cherry Hill. I remember 30 years ago when Corinne Stratton Elmore was a student and Don McCargo were students in Cherry Hill. And they were taking courses which required the readings of books like The Sun Also Rises and The Adventures of Huck Finn. And they told us that they did not want to go to class anymore because the use of the N-word and negative images of African Americans in those books. And at that time, the parents stressed the need for a mandatory course because prior to that time, the only, as I said, the only images that they got in classrooms were those negative images in the brief African American studies that they did during Black History Month. However, we were aware that if the students came in with a recognition that Blacks have been contributors to our society, and their students and the other students around them knew that, it was more acceptable to read these books, and it would add to giving a context to why Huck Finn, the use of the N-word, might have been appropriate at one time, but not appropriate today unless you explain the context that it came up in. And so I am thankful for the courage that is shown by our superintendent, Dr. Mahan and Dr. Wellington, in spearheading this venture. It's unfortunate that during the history of African Americans that we have had to, endure such racism and deaths of people like Emmett Till, Chaney, Goodwin, Schwimmer, and others, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. But I believe that if we all come together and this course might allow us to learn the differences in people are not that great, that we are one people, and that we might at some point find the similarities that we all have together as opposed to the differences that we have. I believe this course will be a giant step in conquering systemic racism. And so I hear that there are people that are reluctant
I'm sorry, Mr. Elmore, your time is up. I apologize.
I thank.
Okay, and Laura Einhorn.
Ann Einhorn, 1017 Edgemore Road. So I have several things which I hope I can get to. I would like one more time if Mrs. Sugars could explain the monies we received last year in May of 2020 through the CARES Act. Could you also explain the ESSR acronym? And do we know if there's a dollar amount yet? or specific dollars designated for specific purposes from the ESSR monies. I am glad to see that Mrs. Mallory and Dr. Morton are finally filling the positions that have been vacant for some time in central administration. I think your discussion on town hall is great, is wonderful. Certainly solicit community ideas. But in all honesty, as I sat through the last one, I'm very disappointed that we consistently get off topic. So if we're going to have a topic, could we stay on that topic unless you're going to have a general purpose town hall? Another thing I have noticed that if it is possible when board members abstain on a vote, if they could please state why. Some of us are a little confused out here and it seems to be a fairly frequent situation. And my last comment regards the community at large. And for those of you who wanted your students in the schools, it would be great if you could support Dr. Malash and start a letter writing campaign to our governor, Governor Murphy, to push him to get all of our personnel COVID inoculations. Because not only do I want the students to be safe, but I want every single employee of the Cherry Hill School District to be protected as well. And as I know very well how difficult it is to get an inoculation appointment, I think that as a community, we could really rally behind our staff and do that for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Einhorn. Okay, looks like that's it for the hands being shown. Mrs. Sugars, do you have any submissions?
I do, quite a few. The first one is from Beth Friedel, 21 Galloping Hill Road. Reason for my letter is concern over the lack of education our students are receiving, not at the fault of teachers. They are going 4 half days, mostly virtual, but more recently some in person, which cannot compare to 5 full in-person days. Along with other parents, we feel that Monday should be made an educational academic day rather than a cooperative learning day. I did reach out to my son's school, however, I was told it was a district-wide policy due to we return to learn. I have little faith that the students will actually be returning to school in person this school year. So I asked, is there a way to make Mondays an educational academic day rather than a cooperative learning day? If the students meet with their respective counselors for social and emotional need in the afternoons by appointment, our students are falling behind those in neighboring districts and it is not fair to them. Thank you in advance for your time regarding this matter. Next one is from Gina Roval of 15 Equestrian Lane. My husband and I are very excited and hopeful as we move toward 4 days of in-person learning for our 2 elementary age boys. As we approach a year of remote learning and still having half days of school, can we start to discuss making Mondays an academic day? We consider socio-emotional content in the afternoons after lunch or even by appointment based on student needs. I understand the importance, but also think there are many kids who could benefit from a day of instructional learning. Please consider this change for the near future. From Colleen Sklar, I'm excited that we're having these discussions and planning appropriately for a return to learn. Would you consider for the second half of the school year to level up educational content on Mondays? Perhaps character ed can be in the afternoon. Sherry Berkey, Berkery, 103 Ramble Road. When schools go to a 4-day hybrid plan, will students continue to log in a Google Meet when they come into classroom? If so, what can the district do to change this and dedicate teachers separately for in-person learning and virtual learning so teachers are not required to do both at once? This is needed to give in-person students the interactive experience of being with a live teacher in a classroom. Next from Leah Wallach, 9 Dale Court. I support bringing the students into the classroom for 4 days. What is the district doing for the 21-22 school year to keep moving forward and allowing students to learn in the classroom off of screens and Google Meet? Will there continue to be a remote-only option? Will teachers be assigned to the remote-only cohort so that those who choose in-school learning get the benefits of face-to-face instruction rather than same virtual environment they access at home? What creative use of space, such as outdoor tents, APR, et cetera, are being considered to expand the opportunity for in-person learning? Francis Lettieri, 1013 Lower Drive. I'm very pleased to see progress towards returning children to the classroom on a more consistent basis. We're hopeful that the 4-day return will pave the way for further steps to get students back into the buildings to learn and recover from the damage for the last 11 plus months. Returning to school is the most critical step towards recovery for families in the district with school-aged children. Ernie Chang, 14 9 Acre Court. I'm sure you are well aware many parents are unhappy with how this school year is going and where it is headed. While there are different reasons for this, a common point is that it is unclear what overarching goal or objective the board or the superintendent has and how various decisions have been made to support it. For instance, is it to keep students and staff safe? In that case, shouldn't we be doing everything practical to prevent the spread of COVID, thus making the difficult decisions to keep optimal airflow in classrooms, ensuring social distancing, strictly mandating masks, and confirming that all of the students and families are restricting their travel or quarantining a minimum of 7 days, then that is impossible. Should we therefore also allow teachers to teach remotely, especially if students aren't in classrooms or school? And wouldn't it have made the most sense to open schools when overall community spread was at a low point rather than almost 10 times higher than it was in the fall? Is it to provide a high quality education that is comparable to a regular school year? If that's the case, how can teachers, parents, or school personnel tell? Are there standardized assessments? No. What are the plans for the future and what benchmarks and guideposts are being used? Is it just to defer to the Camden DOH and say it was their call? Is it a set number of cases or infections? Is it a vaccination rate? Is it based on the number of angry parents complaining about one thing or another? Logically, it would be a combination of all of them. An exact benchmark might change, but having a tangible target would help. Furthermore, what are you going to do in the spring when windows are open and more than a few students or teachers have springtime allergies? We won't really be able to distinguish their sneezes, red eyes, and loss of smell from people infected with COVID. In my family's case, we know that's the reality, and thus we will be staying remote. But what are you going to do with everyone else? Will you send them home to be safe? You should. Or will you believe them and if they say they just have allergies, especially when some families believe COVID is a hoax and are willing to lie? I know I'm not the only person with a lot of concerns and questions, and maybe you don't have all the answers, but the responsibility of the board and the district office is to plan and prepare for multiple possibilities. On top of that, you should also experiment and trial with a few classes or schools to determine best practices. Relying on this all or nothing system of implementation only results in nothing happening. Next is from Michelle and Scott Edmondson. Hello all, thank you for working to provide 4 days a week in-person hybrid learning beginning March 9th. Please find a way to make sure this happens without delay of the start date. This is a big step in the right direction. In-person learning is crucial to our family and our community. Personally, we cannot continue down this path with only 2 4-hour days per week. At home, virtual learning has been extremely difficult for us. We have a first and second grader, and they desperately need in-person interaction to develop socially and academically. We have had almost daily tears and meltdowns due to not being in school since fall. It is sad and depressing watching our children begin school on virtual days only to sit alone in their bedrooms on a computer. We have even had to pay out of pocket for counseling services due to emotional issues arising from the virtual learning situation. It is a financial burden, but we have no choice. We hope this new 4-day in-person option is just the beginning to the light at the end of the tunnel. Please continue to move forward and don't stop until we have 5 full days in person. Please make return to learn a priority on the agenda of every board meeting until this is accomplished. If other districts are able to accomplish this, then Cherry Hill should as well. We appreciate your hard work and dedication to our children. Our kids deserve better. The new CDC guidelines say we can do better. Please give us better. We would also like to ask if there's any type of plan being considered to have teachers dedicated to either all virtual or all in-person learning. Thank you for listening. This is from Jill Ginsburg. Thank you for the 4-day return to learn plan in March. My kids are so excited to see their teachers and classmates. They truly hate remote learning and have been suffering emotionally because of this for the last year. We look forward to a full-time 5 days a week return as soon as possible. In addition to this plan, has the district thought about offering free counseling or therapy sessions to those kids who are struggling? This is being completely ignored and left to parents to deal with. The emotional turmoil of this past year out of school has left on our children. Aside from a quick meeting weekly with school counselor, why hasn't anything additional been added? It's been a year. Also to think about, why hasn't there been a tutoring system put in place for those falling behind? Again, this is placed on parents to fund private tutors and therapists. Lastly, where is the social outlet? Nothing offered in school, not even virtual, to help these kids connect. So yet again, parents are left alone for anything social to help their kids feel less alone. This is from Marissa Rosenberg, 26th Country Walk. What measures have been taken in the schools besides masks, partitions, and social distancing to ensure the safety of teachers and students? What measures are being taken to make sure we are full-time this fall? Carly Cohen, 12 9 Acre Court. I'm extremely concerned and upset about the lack of in-person education in Cherry Hill. First, I am strongly requesting that Mondays are turned back into educational days. We can no longer waste Mondays and rob our children of education. I have not met one parent of a Cherry Hill student who understands how not educating kids on Mondays is effective. Teachers are not trained to teach SEL at all, let alone for 4 hours. So my young kids are left to engage in I/E all by their own selves in their own rooms while parents work. Second, our kids need a plan to get back into school full time. Mondays are being wasted, so are Tuesday through Thursday afternoons. Get plastic screens on each desk, utilize Encore and gym spaces, erect tents outside for lunch, make a plan. It's been a whole year. Right now, there's no evidence that you have plans to return our kids to school. I am not alone in this feeling. I have a large network of parents with kids in Cherry Hill, and I don't know one parent who is happy with non-learning Mondays and half hybrid days. If there's no plan to return our kids to school, please be clear with us so that we can move to other districts. Thank you for listening. Then I received 4 identical comments. I'm only going to read it once. This is from Kim Gallagher, Megan Chase, Bria Stanko, and Bridget Weisinger. Thank you for considering 4-day return in March. We want to make sure this happens. It is critical for the families in this community to have the children in school, for those who choose it. Until our children are in 5 full days per week, we return to learn must be an agenda item at every Board of Education meeting. And that's it.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of second public comment. Dr. Malash, did you have any comments?
I do, Mrs. Neary, thank you. So a few. So first, our goal has been, remains to be, to have all of our children and all of our staff members back in school together at the same time. That's our goal. That's where we want to be. We are in this part right now, looking at the 4 days, and they are early dismissal days. They are 4 hours of instruction days for our kids, 4 days per week. The committees continue to look at what Mondays look like, continue to have the discussion of what does it do to the schedule and to the environment to reintroduce lunch. What does a full day look like? We'll be doing visits with some of our administrators and team members to go to other schools. There are some that are doing lunch in this area. We'll go and visit those. Again, the goal is to have everybody back in school in a safe manner as soon as we can possibly do that. I can't tell you for sure what September is going to look like. Right now, we are working on 3 options. One is a remote learning option. The second one is a hybrid option. And the third one, which is the ideal, is to have everybody back in school, staff and students alike, full-time come September. That is our goal. There are some factors that we have to take into consideration. One of those, and we assume that it's going to happen this so far, but we don't know this for sure. But one is that the state allows us to continue to do virtual instruction in that manner. 2, that we are, based on the public health situation, able to have everybody in school and still follow whatever mitigation practices are required at that time. And that's going to take some time for us to work with the County Department of Health, the New Jersey Department of Education, and the New Jersey Department of Health. We still work within those regulatory guidelines with what they lay out for us. Our committees will continue to meet. We'll continue to update folks on what is taking place. Again, like I said, the committees have talked about Mondays, they're talking about lunch, and looking at what the possibilities are. We want definitely to use outside spaces more. Our technology teams did quite a bit of work back in the fall to expand our Wi-Fi access outside of the buildings. Outside would not have been an overly attractive option during the course of the last month, but we're hoping that in the springtime, we're able to use outside more on a regular basis to be able to count on it as much as we possibly can. The CARES funding, the original CARES funding that we received back in the summer, we spent $241,766 on PPE. We spent $655,799 on technology. Currently, ESSER, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, we received word last Friday afternoon that we will receive $3,489,663 to address needs within the school district. In addition to that, specifically tagged dollars, $223,948 to specifically focus on learning acceleration. And then for mental health support and services, $57,625. So like I said, those numbers were released to us last Friday afternoon. We're going through the process of beginning to look at how those monies will be spent and on what they will be spent. This is nearly that covers most of it. Substitutes, we are still using daily substitutes. We use a third-party vendor to provide the daily substitutes for us. We always encourage more people. We've talked about this for years. The number of substitutes in this area has been a challenge. It's not just a Cherry Hill-ism. So we're always looking for people to sign up to be substitutes, but we are still using daily substitutes in the district. We've also been going through since last November an attempt to hire long-term subs. We have additional subs that are on staff every day. Again, a couple times tonight it was mentioned about $10,000 for a vestibule. I don't know where that dollar figure comes from or what that means or what that looks like. State aid, again, I encourage everybody that's listening, if you can, join the Cherry Hill Fair Funding Committee meeting. It will take place this Thursday evening. There's a link, I believe, from our website to get to fair funding. If not, you can do a search for it and find out for the details. It's in an electronic format for the meeting. I think that's all, Mrs. Neary, that I have.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't believe there are any items for the executive, the second executive session this evening. So that brings us to the end of our meeting. And I motion to adjourn. Can I have a second? Ms. Stratmore. Ms. Sugars?
All in favor? I'm going to say it's unanimous.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Good night.